Hello everyone, this is Six Path Weeb. Welcome back to the channel. Today we continue an exciting and powerful storyline with part 2 of What If Naruko Became the Queen of the Jinchūriki? In this part, we'll explore how Naruko's growing influence begins to reshape the balance of power among the tailed beasts and the shinobi world itself. Alliances will be tested, authority will be challenged, and the title of queen will start to carry real weight. Disclaimer. The content on this channel is created purely for entertainment and discussion purposes. I do not own any anime footage used in this video. All rights and credits belong to their respective creators and copyright holders. With that said, let's begin. Children of Jinchūriki. A wholesome reimagining with Naruko. The sea rolled and shimmered like a living painting, its wide waves stretching outward in gentle spirals. Sunlight danced across the water, and fluffy white clouds were brushed with soft shades of blue and purple, as if the sky itself were smiling. It was a peaceful sight, even though the ocean was still settling from recent excitement. Yagura lifted himself above the water, breathing steadily as he looked around. His expression was thoughtful rather than afraid. He noticed a blonde teenage girl nearby, carefully keeping an unconscious traveler safe above the waves with the help of a simple water technique. Her movements were clumsy but earnest, full of determination. That girl, Yagura murmured to himself, recognizing the effort it took to stay calm in such conditions. He steadied himself and walked across the water toward her, setting aside old worries and focusing on the present moment. As he approached, a sudden swell of waves caused the water technique to fade. The girl stumbled slightly but did not give up. She coughed, shook her head, and tightened her grip, refusing to let the person she carried slip beneath the surface. Yagura reached her side and gently helped lift the unconscious traveler, making the task easier for her. "Are you all right?" he asked kindly. The girl jumped a little in surprise, then turned to look at him. She had bright blue eyes and long blonde hair that clung damply to her shoulders. After a moment, she nodded. "I think so," she said. "I didn't expect help." "There is no reason not to help," Yagura replied with a small smile. "Especially when someone is trying to protect others." They began moving together toward calmer waters. The waves softened, as if listening to them. The girl hesitated before speaking again. I thought ninja from different places were always supposed to be enemies." Yagura shook his head gently. "Not at all. Ninja can learn from one another. Understanding is stronger than fear." She considered his words carefully. "Oh. That makes sense." They walked in thoughtful silence for a while. Yagura studied her posture, her stubborn hope, and her kindness. Something about her felt familiar in a way that warmed his heart. Finally, he asked, "What is your name?" She looked up, standing a little straighter. "Naruko," she said. "Naruko Uzumaki." Yagura smiled, feeling certain that this young ninja's future would be bright. Naruko carried not just strength, but compassion, and that, he knew, was the most powerful gift of all. Naruko felt her shoulders tense as the sea breeze brushed past her. The question she had just heard wasn't loud, but it carried weight. It reminded her of many things she was still learning to understand. That she was connected to an important leader. That this truth had been kept from her for a long time. That she had grown up without answers, even though others may have known them. She gazed out over the rolling waves, letting their steady rhythm help her breathe. "That's what people say," Naruko replied gently. "I'm hoping it isn't the whole story." The village leader beside her tilted his head, curious but kind. "Why is that?" Naruko thought for a moment before answering. "Because I want to believe that everyone does their best, even when things don't turn out the way we expect. And because I want to understand my family's story without holding on to hurt." The leader nodded, clearly moved by her words. "That takes a lot of courage." Naruko offered a small smile. "I'm still learning." After a pause, she added, "My name is Uzumaki Naruko. My mother was an Uzumaki too. I learned that from an old record, but I never got to hear her tell me about it herself." The leader's eyes brightened with recognition. "The Uzumaki are known for their warmth and strength of heart. That fits you well." Naruko felt something warm settle in her chest. "I hope so." Not far away, Fu pulled herself onto the dock, shaking water from her sleeves and laughing softly. The ferry had been delayed by rough waves, but everyone was safe. Travelers sat nearby, tired but relieved. Fu had always found people confusing. Most of the time, she preferred her own company. But things had changed since she met a small group who treated her with patience and respect. "Fu," Gaara called calmly, offering her a towel. "Can you help check on the others? Some of them are a bit shaken." Fu blinked. They'll be okay, right? Yes, Gaara replied. They just need reassurance. Fu considered this, then nodded. All right. As she helped others settle and rest, she thought of Naruko, bright, determined, and always choosing kindness. That made the task feel easier somehow. This must be what Naruko means, Fu murmured to herself, when she says helping others helps us grow too. And for the first time, Fu smiled while working, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. The air around Yagura felt calm and light, as if a soft breeze followed him wherever he went. Over time, he had learned to naturally blend his chakra with the wind, giving his presence a peaceful clarity that made people feel both curious and thoughtful. He walked beside Naruko, a bright-haired girl with kind eyes and 3 small whisker-like marks on each cheek. She listened closely, even when the subject felt heavy. To place great responsibility on a child, Yagura said gently, especially one born into a special legacy, is something that must be done with great care. Naruko tilted her head slightly. Why is that? She asked. Her voice was quiet, but sincere. Yagura paused, surprised by her courage. He smiled softly before answering. Because some children are already strong in ways that others may not see, he explained. They carry a connection to powerful energy through their family. That bond can be a gift, but it can also feel overwhelming if not understood. Naruko touched her cheek without realizing it. You mean these marks? Yes, Yagura nodded. They show that you are connected to someone who once carried a great responsibility. That connection gives you strength, but also feelings that can be confusing. Naruko's eyes widened. How do you know all this? Yagura continued, his voice steady and kind. Long ago, wise leaders worked together to protect the world by sharing powerful guardians among the lands. Some families were trusted to help care for them. In one village, a child was born who could already sense this guardian's energy without trying. Everyone hoped it meant she would grow into someone strong and wise. He sighed quietly. But they didn't yet understand how important patience and support were. The child grew up feeling alone with emotions she couldn't explain. Instead of helping her understand them, the adults made choices too quickly. Naruko hugged her arms close. What happened to her? She became confused and overwhelmed, Yagura said gently. Not because she was bad, but because no one taught her how to handle what she felt. Later, people learned from that mistake. Naruko swallowed. So, kids like me need help learning, not fear? Yes, Yagura said warmly. Exactly that. They stopped walking. Yagura knelt slightly so he was at Naruko's eye level. There is nothing wrong with you, he said. Your feelings matter. Your strength matters. And with the right guidance, you can grow into someone who brings light to others. Naruko's eyes shimmered. I left my village because they were afraid of me. I'm sorry, Yagura said honestly. Fear often comes from not understanding. But you are more than what others fear. Naruko took a deep breath. I want to learn. I want to be better. Yagura smiled. And that is why your future will be bright. The truth wasn't always easy to hear, but sometimes, understanding it was the first step toward becoming stronger, kinder, and wiser than anyone ever expected. As the group finally reached the port, the gentle glow of lanterns reflected across the water. Roshi was barely awake, supported carefully by Fu, who was clearly exhausted. Holding the floating platform steady in such rough conditions had taken more effort than anyone expected, even for someone with great inner strength. People along the docks gasped as boats hurried out to meet them. Helpers guided everyone safely ashore so no one had to push themselves any further. What happened out there? Someone called, wide-eyed with concern. Gaara stepped forward calmly, his voice steady and reassuring. We were fortunate, he said. But our friends need rest and care right away. Doctors and healers quickly arrived, checking everyone and leading those who needed extra help toward a nearby clinic. Once the platform was no longer needed, Gaara let out a quiet breath of relief as the sand settled back into place. Soon after, he guided the group toward a cozy inn, where warm lights and quiet rooms promised recovery. They would need their strength if they hoped to ask Utakata for help in finding Naruko and Han. Naruko's tears slowly faded as the night grew quiet. The moon hung low, soft and silver, and the waves gently lapped against the shore. She wiped her eyes and looked up at the calm man beside her. You know, she said with a small laugh, her voice still shaky but lighter now, I never asked your name. The man smiled kindly. Tadashi Yagura. I once served as Mizukage. Naruko tilted her head. Once? Yes, Yagura replied thoughtfully. I realized I needed time to reflect and learn. Leaders grow best when they listen. Naruko nodded, holding Han a little closer. That makes sense. Everyone makes mistakes. Yagura looked at her with surprise, then respect. You are wiser than you realize, Naruko. Just then, the clouds parted, and a gentle light shimmered across the sky in the direction they were headed. Naruko stood a little taller, hope blooming in her chest. Looks like we're not alone, she said softly. And together, with renewed courage and kindness guiding them, they continued forward, ready to help, ready to grow, and ready to believe in brighter days ahead. A gentle awakening. Utakata stirred and opened his eyes, surprised by the warmth beneath his head. A pillow. Soft. Clean. Comfortable. That alone told him something unusual had happened. He sat up slowly and looked around. Sunlight filtered through a nearby window, filling the quiet room with a calm glow. There were no restraints, no harsh voices, and no signs of danger, only a sense of peace he had not expected. You are awake, said a calm, steady voice. That is good. Utakata turned and saw a red-haired teenager standing respectfully near the doorway. The youth's expression was serious but not unkind. A deep red scarf was wrapped neatly around her shoulders, and a decorated container rested at her side. I am Kuro-san no Gaara, the teen said. You are safe here. Utakata blinked. Safe? He repeated, puzzled. Before he could ask more, footsteps sounded behind him. A cheerful voice chimed in, bright as morning sunshine. See? I told you he'd wake up soon. Utakata turned and found himself facing a blonde teenage girl with lively blue eyes and a warm smile. Her posture was relaxed, her presence welcoming. I'm Naruko Uzumaki, she said proudly. And don't worry, we're the helping kind. She gave a thumbs up, radiating confidence and friendliness. Behind Naruko stood two more companions, a quiet girl with a thoughtful gaze and an older man who leaned on a walking staff, smiling patiently. We travel together, the older man said. Our goal is simple, to make sure everyone is okay. Utakata studied them carefully. There were no signs of hostility, only concern. I sensed something was wrong during our journey, Naruko continued, her voice gentle now. Some people were separated, and we want to help bring everyone back together. Utakata hesitated, then nodded slowly. I understand, he said. I once taught others, too. Helping someone find their way matters. The group shared a quiet moment of understanding. The older man flexed his hands, pleased. Thanks to some careful care and rest, I'm feeling much better. Naruko beamed. Teamwork does wonders. Gaara inclined her head. Then we should leave soon. Time matters, but we will move wisely. Utakata stood, feeling steadier than before. Very well, he said. I will guide you. Naruko smiled even wider. Awesome. Let's go help some people. And together, with trust, kindness, and hope guiding their steps, they set out, not to fight, but to heal, reunite, and grow. The sky had softened into deep shades of purple by the time the group reached the docks. Lanterns along the water flickered to life, their reflections dancing gently across the waves. Utakata had insisted on changing clothes before meeting them, and everyone had politely agreed to wait. When he finally appeared, however, the group simply stared. Gaara tilted his head slightly. Is that common fashion in the land of water? He asked Roshi, who was still blinking in surprise. I honestly couldn't say, Roshi replied, stroking his beard as he examined the outfit with curious interest. Fu leaned closer, lowering her voice thoughtfully. Maybe it's a style meant to blend tradition and comfort? Gaara nodded. That seems reasonable. Utakata crossed his arms. You are all overthinking this, he said with a huff. It is simply a traveling kimono. Comfortable. Practical. And completely normal. Roshi laughed warmly. Fair enough. It suits you. That seemed to ease Utakata's tension, and he turned his gaze toward the quiet water. After a moment, he spoke again, his voice calm but serious. I must ask, why are several Jinchūriki traveling together through the land of water without formal notice? The mood shifted, but only slightly. No one panicked. No one raised a weapon. Instead, Roshi stepped forward with an open, honest smile. We're traveling together by choice, he said. A student of mine brought us together. All of us, Fu added cheerfully. Because teamwork matters. Utakata looked surprised. A student? Gaara nodded. Her name is Naruko. At the mention of her name, something about the atmosphere felt brighter, as if even the lantern light warmed. She believes no one should have to walk alone, Roshi continued. Especially not people like us. Utakata considered this quietly. I have heard troubling stories, he admitted. Rumors about danger and fear. Roshi chuckled. Rumors tend to grow bigger than the truth. We're just traveling, learning, and helping where we can. After a pause, Utakata asked, then who leads your group? Roshi shrugged. Officially? No one. But Naruko brings people together. That's a kind of leadership all its own. Gaara allowed himself a small smile. She listens. And she believes in people. Utakata found that answer comforting. Before he could respond, a sudden rush of wind swept across the dock. A seagull swooped overhead, dropping a burst of glowing paper charms that fluttered harmlessly into the water, sparkling like tiny stars. From above, a loud voice called out, full of surprise rather than anger. Well, that didn't land where I expected. Everyone looked up to see an older man standing atop a wooden beam, waving apologetically. Sorry about that. The man called. Festival practice. Still working on my aim. Roshi laughed. Fu clapped. Even Utakata smiled. Somewhere out there, Naruko was probably grinning too, bringing people together without force, just as she always did. And under the lantern-lit sky, the journey continued, peaceful, hopeful, and shared. Deidara had not expected his newest assignment to feel so confusing. He was told to locate the Rakubi's traveling guardian and quietly observe the situation. No chasing, no fighting, no damage, just learning. That was it. Still, Deidara felt oddly disappointed. He loved art that made people stop and stare, and observation felt boring compared to creating something meaningful. To make matters stranger, the information came from a masked messenger named Toby, who behaved like an overexcited child. Toby appeared out of nowhere, talked very fast, and gave directions using dramatic hand gestures that made very little sense. Deidara decided to trust the map instead. After traveling across lands and skies, Deidara arrived at a cheerful port town just as evening lights flickered on. Lanterns glowed warmly, and boats rested gently against the docks. People laughed, musicians played flutes, and the air smelled like fresh bread. Then Deidara saw her. Naruko stood near the water, talking animatedly with an older traveler. She had bright eyes full of curiosity and an easy smile that made everyone around her relax. She wore her orange jacket proudly and listened carefully, nodding as if every word mattered. Something about her presence felt important. Deidara hovered above on his clay bird, unseen. Instead of preparing anything dangerous, he shaped a small clay seagull in his palm, not as a weapon, but as art. With careful focus, he released it. The tiny bird fluttered down and landed gently on the dock. Naruko noticed immediately. Oh! Look at that, she said, crouching down. It's beautiful. The clay bird spread its wings and shimmered softly in the lantern light before dissolving into harmless dust. No noise, no harm, just a moment of wonder. Naruko looked up, smiling. Whoever made that must really care about sharing joy, she said. From above, Deidara froze. For the first time in a long while, his art had made someone happy instead of afraid. He guided his clay bird higher into the sky, watching Naruko laugh with the townspeople as music continued below. He realized that maybe learning didn't have to be dull. Maybe observing could change him, too. And somewhere deep inside, Deidara decided that creating beauty, especially the kind that made kids smile, was worth more than any assignment. A bright night over the water. The night sky shimmered as strange lights reflected across the sea. High above the water, clever techniques and quick thinking decided the outcome of a tense encounter, not through harm, but through strategy and timing. Roshi stood balanced on the water's surface, calm but alert. He knew the challenge before him was not just strength, but unpredictability. Deidara had always been known for creativity that bordered on chaos. Once a gifted student, he had let disappointment twist his talents into reckless displays. Even now, his creations darted through the air like mischievous fireflies. Nearby, Utakata remained quiet beneath the surface, waiting patiently. He understood that rushing in would only cause trouble. When the moment was right, he rose with perfect timing, using clever water techniques to scatter Deidara creations safely away. The sea itself seemed to help, calming as the danger faded. Deidara, realizing his tricks had failed, chose retreat over stubbornness. With a dramatic flourish, he vanished into the sky, leaving behind only ripples and fading light. The water settled, peaceful once more. Roshi exhaled slowly. That could have gone better, he muttered, though he was relieved everyone was still safe. Utakata simply nodded, already thinking ahead. Dash. Racing toward the light. Far from the quiet water, Naruko Uzumaki ran as fast as she could along the shoreline, her sandals tapping rhythmically against the ground. Beside her was Yagura, moving with steady determination. Together, they carried their tired companion, Han, taking turns to make sure he stayed safe and dry. "Did you see that light?" Naruko asked, her bright eyes reflecting curiosity rather than fear. "It was huge." "I did," Yagura replied calmly. "Whatever caused it was powerful, but also controlled. That tells me whoever it was knew what they were doing." Naruko nodded, trusting his judgment. Even while tired, she felt excited. Big events meant big lessons, and she was always eager to learn. When they finally reached the port, warm air drifted around them like a leftover hug from the earlier glow. "That warmth," Naruko said thoughtfully. "It feels like the end of something." "Yes," Yagura agreed. "And sometimes, the end of one thing is the beginning of another." Dash. New paths and old stories. As they walked toward a nearby inn, Yagura spoke quietly. He shared stories of the past, of villages, clans, and people who struggled with great power and great responsibility. He spoke not with bitterness, but with reflection. Naruko listened closely. She always did. Stories helped her understand the world, and herself. "You know," Yagura said after a moment, "I plan to step away from my old role. I think it's time for a quieter path." Naruko blinked. "Really?" "Yes. And if you wish," he added kindly, "you're welcome to visit my training grounds someday. I think we could both learn a lot." Naruko's face lit up, not with excitement alone, but with gratitude. "I'd like that," she said honestly. Dash. An unexpected reunion. Inside the inn, warmth and lamplight greeted them. Yagura arranged a room, explaining cheerfully that Han was simply very tired from traveling. As they settled in, Naruko paused. A familiar voice drifted through the wall, one she recognized from earlier travels. Her curiosity got the better of her. Opening the adjoining door, she nearly bumped straight into a tall man with a surprised expression. "Oh. Sorry," Naruko exclaimed, stepping back quickly. The man blinked, then sighed. "Next time, maybe knock first." Before Naruko could respond, Yagura spoke calmly from behind her. "Good evening," he said. The man froze. The room went very quiet. Naruko looked between them, sensing that this meeting, unexpected as it was, might lead to important answers, and perhaps, a new understanding. She smiled softly, hopeful as always. Whatever came next, she was ready to face it, with kindness, courage, and curiosity. Naruko blinked and looked up at the pale man standing frozen above her. His raised hand stopped midair as Yagura's calm voice filled the room. Slowly, carefully, Naruko scooted sideways, her jacket bunching uncomfortably beneath her as she slid away from him. Once she was clear, she pushed herself upright. She wobbled, nearly losing her balance, but Roshi rushed in and steadied himself beside his brother, Han. Naruko noticed Roshi's worried expression and spoke quickly. "He's okay," she said gently. "Just resting. He'll wake up soon." Roshi let out a quiet breath of relief and stayed where he was, sitting close to Han. Naruko glanced toward Yagura, who was seated calmly across the room. "Yagura's all right too," she added, waving lightly in his direction. Yagura turned his attention to the tall man near the door. "Well, Utakata?" he asked evenly. "Why do we knock before entering a room?" Utakata swallowed and answered slowly, his voice dry. "Because someone inside might be handling something important." "And?" Yagura prompted. Utakata hesitated, then sighed. "Because it's polite." Naruko let out a small giggle before she could stop herself. Yagura turned his steady gaze toward her. "The same rule applies to you, Naruko," he said, not unkindly. "Entering without knocking is only acceptable during official duties. Courtesy matters." Naruko straightened at once. "Yes, sir." Satisfied, Yagura nodded and moved to greet Gaara and Fu in the next room. As he passed Utakata, he paused briefly. "I understand why you acted quickly," Yagura said. "I would have done the same." The tension eased after that. Gaara and Fu soon approached Naruko. "It's good to see you safe," Gaara said quietly. Naruko smiled and waved it off. "I'm fine. I always bounce back." She almost added more, but stopped herself. For the first time, she wasn't sure what came next. Lately, she had learned things about herself, about her family, and about expectations placed on her before she ever had a choice. It left her thoughtful instead of loud. Fu noticed the pause and tugged gently on Naruko's sleeve. "You sure you're not hurt?" "I'm really okay," Naruko replied, a little too quickly. Seeing Fu's surprised expression, she softened her tone. "I promise." "So, how did things go?" Gaara explained calmly how they had worked together, helped people get to safety, and found Naruko afterward. Naruko listened closely and nodded, grateful for her friends. Her gaze drifted to Roshi again, still watching over his brother. Naruko understood that quiet worry. She had felt something similar once, long ago, when she feared losing someone important. A voice interrupted her thoughts. "You're not what I expected." Naruko turned, surprised, and nearly stumbled before catching herself. Utakata stood nearby, studying her thoughtfully. "I thought you'd be more formal," he continued. "From the stories, I imagined someone very polished." Naruko looked down at her wrinkled jacket and damp hair, then shrugged. "I've had a long day." She smiled, not unkindly. "You should rest too. Tomorrow's better for talking." Utakata opened his mouth to argue, then paused. After a moment, he nodded. "That's fair." One by one, everyone prepared their sleeping mats. The room grew quiet and calm, filled with soft breathing and gentle peace. Naruko curled up on a futon near the corner. As her eyes closed, she felt tired, but also hopeful. Tomorrow might bring questions, but it would also bring answers, and she was ready to grow into whoever she was meant to be. It had been a long day. And tomorrow would be a new one. Yagura lay quietly on his futon as dawn slowly crept closer. Around him, the others slept peacefully, their gentle breathing filling the room like a calm rhythm. Yet his thoughts were far from restful. They kept returning to one person, Uzumaki Naruko. What she had done earlier was rare and remarkable. Instead of using fear or force, Naruko had focused her spirit so clearly that everyone could feel her determination. It wasn't something taught in books or drills. It came from the heart. Stories spoke of leaders long ago who could inspire others simply by believing in them, and Naruko had done just that. Yagura found himself smiling faintly. Naruko had a way of bringing people together without trying to command them. She listened. She encouraged. She made others feel seen. Even those who usually preferred to walk alone seemed drawn to her kindness. Yes, Yagura thought, a gentle plan forming. This could lead to something wonderful. Morning arrived quickly. Han opened his eyes, blinking at the soft light above him. The last thing he remembered was standing near the sea, feeling a strange wave of energy ripple through the air like a calming breeze. Now, he was warm, safe, and indoors. "You're awake," came a familiar voice. Han turned to see his older brother, Roshi, already on his feet and smiling with relief. Roshi had always been the caring one, quick to worry and quicker to help. "I'm all right," Han said with a nod. "What happened?" Before Roshi could answer, a cheerful voice called out from the doorway. "Good morning," Naruko said brightly, waving. She stood framed by sunlight, her blonde hair slightly messy, her smile full of energy. Around the room, everyone was waking up in their own way. Gaara sat quietly, already calm and thoughtful, while Fu stretched happily and chatted about starting the day with a positive mindset. Nearby, Utakata and Yagura carefully checked their tools, moving with calm focus. "These are Utakata and Yagura," Naruko explained. "They're friends." Han paused, surprised, but nodded politely as Yagura approached. "I would like to apologize," Yagura said sincerely, bowing. "I wasn't myself before, and I'm grateful for the chance to make things right." Han was still processing when Naruko stepped beside them. "It's okay," she said warmly. "We're all learning." Yagura smiled and stepped back, and Naruko continued, almost bouncing with excitement. "Guess what? Yagura offered to train with me, and invited everyone too." Fu tilted her head. "All of us?" "Of course," Yagura replied. "I'd like to help each of you understand your unique strengths better." The room filled with interest and curiosity. Naruko hesitated for a moment, then spoke honestly. "There's something special about how I connect with my energy. Sometimes it feels different." Gaara nodded thoughtfully. "Her parents were remarkable leaders," he said. "That legacy matters." Yagura listened carefully. "There are many paths to understanding oneself," he said gently. "Some are rare, but none are wrong." Roshi smiled. "Sounds like we've got a lot to learn." Fu clapped her hands. "A journey together. I like it already." Naruko beamed at her friends, feeling warmth spread through her chest. She didn't know exactly what lay ahead, but she knew one thing for sure. Whatever came next, they would face it together, learning, growing, and supporting one another every step of the way. And that made all the difference. Naruko listened quietly as Roshi spoke, his voice calm but filled with respect. Uchiha Madara is known as one of the most powerful shinobi in history, Roshi said. He was also one of the very few who could work together with the great-tailed creatures in harmony. He paused, taking a steady breath. That was when Yagura gently stepped forward to continue. That part isn't completely true, Yagura said kindly. A shinobi who shares a bond with a tailed creature can learn to work with them fully. The room grew quiet as everyone turned toward him. Gaara spoke next, his voice careful but hopeful. How can you be sure? Because I learned how myself, Yagura replied. Naruko's eyes widened. She took a step forward, her voice clear and determined. Then you should teach us. If there's a way for us to grow stronger together and protect everyone better, we shouldn't ignore it. A few surprised murmurs followed. Utakata crossed his arms thoughtfully. I'm not sure I'm ready for that. Roshi smiled gently. Sometimes, having others beside you makes all the difference. Utakata considered this, then gave a small nod. You might be right. Naruko grinned. See? We're better when we work as a team. Preparing for the journey was busy but cheerful. Everyone took turns organizing supplies, sharing snacks, and making sure no one was left out. There were a few playful disagreements, mostly about whose turn it was to pack last, but they were quickly settled with laughter. When Yagura returned from changing, everyone paused in surprise. His new outfit was simple and comfortable, with warm earth-toned colors that suited him well. He looked lighter somehow, more at ease. The biggest change, though, was his expression, calm and confident. Fu blinked. Wow. Yagura chuckled softly. Sometimes a fresh start helps. Gaara nodded in understanding. You look more like yourself. Yagura smiled. That's exactly how I feel. Naruko stepped forward, hands on her hips, eyes shining with excitement. So, about that training you mentioned, where do we go? Yagura's smile turned playful, but kind. To a place where learning is safe, focused, and built on trust, he said. My personal training grounds. Naruko pumped her fist happily. All right. Let's grow stronger, together. The sky was filled with clouds, soft and gray, dimming the day until everything below looked gently powdered, like an old storybook illustration. The sunlight peeked through only now and then, as if the clouds were shy and preferred to linger together rather than drift apart. Yagura stood calmly at the front of the boat he had recently acquired from a cheerful elderly sailor, who had been more interested in sharing stories than haggling over price. During their chat, the sailor excitedly shared a rumor that was already floating across the elemental nations like a message in a bottle. The former Mizukage had quietly stepped away from leadership, and the legendary three-tailed giant turtle had wandered off on a peaceful journey of its own. Yagura had listened with a thoughtful smile. Shock was not quite the right word for how he felt. If anything, he was quietly amused. A simple change of clothing and the fading of an old mark had made him completely unrecognizable. That had been his hope, of course, but he had not expected it to work so well that he could now walk openly, use his real name, and still be treated like any other traveler. As the boat glided forward, Yagura looked across the deck. Naruko and Utakata were seated nearby, engaged in what could generously be called a conversation. Naruko was animated, her bright curiosity shining through every word, while Utakata listened patiently, offering calm replies and the occasional thoughtful nod. Naruko leaned forward, hands resting on her knees, eyes sparkling. So the sea really connects all the lands? That's amazing. It's like everyone's part of one big neighborhood. Utakata smiled gently. That's one way to see it. Traveling teaches you how closed the world really is. Yagura extended his awareness, not out of concern, but simple habit. Han was below deck, quietly organizing supplies with steady focus. Fu and Gaara sat together near the railing, sharing one of their peaceful, thoughtful talks, watching the water ripple by. Roshi was humming a low, cheerful tune as he brewed tea, filling the air with a comforting scent. The boat felt less like a vessel and more like a moving home. Yagura rested his hands on the railing and allowed himself a quiet moment of contentment. This journey was not about hiding or running away. It was about learning, growing, and sharing the road with others who were doing the same. Naruko laughed at something Utakata said, her voice bright and full of hope. She had come a long way, and there was still so much ahead of her. As the boat continued forward beneath the patient clouds, it carried not secrets or sorrow, but possibility. And for now, that was more than enough. I don't trust you. Ah. Yes. Roshi had just stepped into the wheelhouse. I don't expect you to. Not yet. Yagura replied calmly, shrugging off the piercing gaze from the older woman. Though your distrust doesn't explain why you and your sister are here with us on this journey. Me and Han have most likely been declared missing or, well, gone. Returning wouldn't help anyone, Roshi said sharply. That doesn't mean we'll just follow your orders, either. I am not the person you think I am. Yagura cut straight to the point. That isn't exactly what I meant, Roshi said, her tone softening slightly. Yagura decided to be honest, he had never been one to hide the truth from someone he considered a comrade. Regardless, that's why you're here, isn't it? He said, phrasing it as a question, though it was more of a statement. Staying on topic was important, otherwise, he would get nowhere with Roshi. I don't believe that Madara is still alive after all this time, Roshi confessed. But if you had wanted to trick us, it would have been easier to tell something simpler. I did not lie to any of you, Yagura replied, keeping his eyes on the endless sea ahead. You're a cage, Roshi said, stepping closer. Sometimes lying comes naturally to people in positions like yours. Her voice turned slightly bitter, though Yagura could sense it wasn't directed at him entirely. Your father-in-law is the Sandaime Tsuchikage, correct? Yagura asked carefully. What about it? And your grandfather? He was Mu, the Nidaime Tsuchikage. Died long before I was born, Roshi waved dismissively. What's your point? My point is that you seem to have a hard time with the title of Kage, Yagura explained. Maybe because people expected you to be the Yondaime Tsuchikage. I never wanted the job, Roshi said firmly. I'm not really one for leading. Still, Yagura said thoughtfully, you've guided these kids pretty well. I just picked the path. Never really led them, Roshi explained. If anyone's the leader, it's the Gaki, or Gaara. That caught Yagura's attention. Why do you say that? Han. As talented as he is, he gets too emotional to focus when it matters most. And he prefers being alone. Roshi paused. Fu. She's a little too unpredictable. She'd probably run off and leave someone behind rather than risk herself. And what about Naruko and Gaara? Yagura asked, intrigued. Roshi's reasoning made sense based on the little he had observed. If those two worked together, they'd make amazing leaders, Roshi said, a small smile tugging at her lips. Gaara has the level-headedness and cleverness to guide a team, but not the warmth to inspire them. That's where Naruko comes in. That's true, Yagura agreed. He himself had been drawn to the fiery, unyielding energy of the blonde-haired ninja girl. She just has a way of making people want to follow her. Exactly, Roshi agreed, and Yagura wondered if the man was a little more trusting of him than before. And what do you think of me? Yagura asked. It felt a bit bold, but sometimes the best time to ask a question was when the answer mattered most. You're a mystery, Roshi replied, calm and steady, making Yagura blink in surprise. And in the ninja world, mysteries like yours can be tricky to figure out. I apologize if I seem confusing, Yagura said, looking away for a moment. I thought my intentions were clear, but maybe I was mistaken. You're on the right track, Roshi said, giving a small nod. Just know that I want to help you. The only thing I hope for is to examine Naruko's seal, Yagura said, turning his eyes back to the horizon. She's the only one of the children who hasn't lost herself, and I want to see how she manages her abilities without going overboard. If that's all you want, I can tell you this, Roshi said. Naruko can transform her energy into a one-tailed cloak, and we even had a calm conversation before it faded. What caused it to fade? Yagura asked, curiosity piqued. The cloak ran out of energy, Roshi said. Yagura frowned slightly. Usually, losing control like that was rare. Roshi noticed and tilted his head. Is something wrong? He asked. Possibly, Yagura said. I'll know for sure once I examine her seal. As Roshi left, the faint sound of the closing door echoed, leaving Yagura with his thoughts. What kind of seal allows someone to control such power so carefully? Out on the deck, Naruko was chatting with Utakata. The air had grown cooler, but they didn't seem to notice. I just don't get it, Naruko said, tilting her head. If your main job is healing, how are you so fast and skillful? Utakata smiled gently, but there was a hint of weariness. Healing isn't all I do, he said. I also train others to move swiftly, notice every detail, and stay calm under pressure. My most promising student. He paused, memories tugging at him, and quickly changed the topic. Naruko, curious as ever, didn't let it go. Your most promising student? Who? Utakata sighed. I don't like talking about it yet. Naruko crossed her arms, determination shining in her eyes. Come on. Please. Finally, Utakata chuckled softly, surrendering to her persistence. All right. Just a little story, he said. Some time ago, I taught a young apprentice everything I knew, how to travel fast, notice even tiny details, and stay calm. But one day, during a very difficult mission, my apprentice couldn't continue. Utakata's eyes grew distant, remembering the challenge. It was hard, but it reminded me how precious each student is. Naruko listened closely, her usual bright energy softening into understanding. It sounds like you cared a lot about them, she said quietly. I did, Utakata admitted, smiling faintly. And that's why I teach carefully now, making sure every student grows safely and confidently. Naruko nodded, inspired. Then I want to keep learning too, and get stronger, not just for me, but so I can help others like you helped your student. Utakata looked at her, a flicker of pride in his eyes. I think you already have that spirit, Naruko. And that's what makes someone truly strong. And Utakata ground out through clenched teeth. The kid wasn't really into fighting, Naruko said gently. She didn't like it and tried to avoid it whenever possible. A dark pit started to form in Utakata's stomach. It can't be. Her name was Haku. Utakata's entire form shifted, and even Yagura winced at the response. No. Haku? Utakata's voice came out weak, heavy with the emotional weight crashing down on him. About your size, brown eyes, black hair, looks like a girl? In the briefest pause, Naruko nodded slightly, and Utakata got all the answer he needed. Slumping down, he buried his face in his arms, letting out the tears he couldn't, shed for his student. Hunter Nin weren't allowed to let their emotions cloud their judgment. But some losses. Some feelings couldn't be bottled forever. I'm sorry. The words, though expected, were too much for Utakata. His grief had already run its course, leaving only the sting of guilt, and anger at himself for not noticing the signs, at Zabuza for taking his beloved student, and at the circumstances that shaped them all. Don't say you're sorry. Utakata spoke through his cracked voice, looking at Naruko with bloodshot eyes. You did nothing, to be sorry about. His voice steadied, though the grief turned into quiet anger at his own blindness, anger at the world for its unfairness. She died protecting Zabuza. Naruko's voice carried across the table, soft but firm. The two of them cared for each other, in the end. Even Zabuza went a little crazy with grief. Utakata looked up upon hearing of Haku's final moments, understanding the depth of her courage. They had both wished, in their own way, to protect one another, and in those final moments, they had succeeded. Haku always did have a way of touching people's hearts, Utakata chuckled, which quickly turned into soft sobs as he realized the meaning behind Haku's last words to him. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. Haku had known she had to make her own sacrifice and was trying to ensure Utakata could go on afterwards. Utakata stood, moving toward his room, before he felt a gentle hand on his arm. Turning, he saw Naruko standing there, with Yagura a few feet behind her. I'm sorry, Naruko began. For having to tell you that. I just thought you might want some closure. I had no idea they were the same person. But she taught me my nindo, to grow stronger, to protect those I care about, and to never give up on my promises. For the first time in years, Utakata smiled. A real, true smile. I hope you're happy wherever you are, Haku. From that day, the mood aboard the ship shifted. Mealtimes became lively as everyone shared stories from their past missions. Gaara recounted his childhood, prompting Naruko to pull him into a full-body hug, something Gaara-san usually resisted. Eventually, he gave a tiny, reluctant return hug, earning a round of laughter from the group. Utakata shared amusing tales of senior Hunter Nin pranks on the rookies, like sending them to infiltrate homes that turned out to be inhabited by powerful kunoichi. Roshi and Han reminisced about childhood adventures, including the silly traps they'd set up, some ending in sticky honey or harmless mud. Fu joined in, learning to offer support and aid to anyone injured during training or missions. And no one noticed until I was finished that the faces had been painted. Naruko finished, grinning, and the crew laughed at her audacity. Suddenly, Han's voice rang out across the deck. We're approaching land. The group quieted, moving to the deck to watch as the morning mist revealed a lush, jungle-covered island. We've arrived, Yagura announced from the wheelhouse. At this pace, we'll dock within the hour. The hour passed quickly. They approached a simple wooden dock, supplies rolled neatly into scrolls for each of them. This island was gifted to the Uzumaki clan that sealed the Rakubi and Sanbi into their first Jinchūriki, Yagura explained. It contains the sealing secrets that survived, hidden from the world. Only those trained here, like me, know its location. But how did the clan communicate when a new Jinchūriki was needed? Roshi asked. The Uzumaki had ways only they could understand, Yagura replied. Not even Kaido-sensei knew all the details. It was the second most closely guarded secret of the clan. Ahead, a massive stone wall loomed, its surface smooth and pristine. Welcome to the Uzumaki clan compound, Yagura said, bowing. That's it? Naruko asked, her brow furrowed. I expected something bigger. It may seem simple, Yagura said, opening the gate, but this wall holds the greatest secret of the Uzumaki clan. Inside, the compound was peaceful, with courtyards and intricately carved pillars covered in seals. The number of tails doesn't determine a bijuu's strength, Yagura explained. It's just for identification. The Uzumaki created barriers to protect entire cities. This compound is the ultimate training ground to master a bijuu safely. But first, I need to check your seal, Yagura said, his expression serious. Why? Naruko asked, slightly unnerved. Because your connection to your bijuu isn't fully stable yet, Yagura replied. Naruko straightened, ready to face the challenge. She had grown so much already, and this was just the beginning. Naruko and the Whispering Seal. Naruko stood very still as Yagura examined the glowing pattern on her stomach. She did not mind showing the seal, it had always been a part of her, but the way Yagura studied it made her nervous. His eyes were thoughtful, not unkind, but very serious, like someone staring at a puzzle that mattered a great deal. So that's how it's arranged, Yagura said gently, stepping back to see the full design. Naruko swallowed. Is something wrong? The seal itself is beautifully made, Yagura assured her. Strong, careful, and full of care. It was designed to protect you and help you grow safely. Naruko relaxed a little. Then why do you look worried? Because it is too careful, Yagura replied kindly. You are carrying a great source of energy, but the seal limits how naturally that energy can move. Over time, that imbalance could make it harder for you to feel calm and steady. Roshi, who was listening nearby, nodded slowly. So what's the solution? We guide the seal into a new shape, Yagura said. One that gives Naruko more balance. Naruko blinked. That's it? Well, Yagura added with a small smile, there's one unusual step. A safe journey between moments. Several days later, Naruko stood in the center of a bright, clean room in the Uzumaki compound. The walls were decorated with gentle spirals, and sunlight poured in through tall windows. She wore her usual comfortable clothes, and the seal glowed softly beneath them, responding to the calm atmosphere. Yagura knelt nearby, carefully drawing new symbols on the floor. So how does this work again? Naruko asked. You'll enter a deep, safe seal trance, Yagura explained. Think of it like stepping between two moments. Time will slow, but you'll still be yourself. And I won't be alone? Naruko asked. Never, Yagura said immediately. I'll be there with you the whole time. Naruko smiled. That helped. When everything was ready, Yagura and Utakata placed their hands on the final symbols. The room filled with a warm light, like sunrise through mist. The quiet realm. Naruko suddenly felt light, like she was standing inside a dream that wasn't scary at all. The world around her moved slowly, gently, like drifting clouds. It worked, Yagura said beside her. Naruko looked down and gasped, not in fear, but surprise. Her seal shimmered, connected to threads of golden light stretching into the space around them. A tall, calm figure appeared, not frightening, not angry, but ancient and thoughtful, like a guardian of old stories. You have come to adjust an agreement, the guardian said in a voice like wind through bells. Naruko stepped forward bravely. I want to grow without fear. I want balance. The guardian studied her kindly. A fair wish. And you are offering understanding in return. Naruko nodded. I want to learn who I am, and help others do the same. The guardian smiled. Then the seal shall change. With a soft hum, the golden threads rearranged themselves, forming a new pattern, strong, steady, and gentle. Back where she belongs. Naruko blinked and found herself back in the bright room, the sunlight just as warm as before. She sat up, feeling different, not heavier, not lighter, but clearer. Yagura smiled in relief. How do you feel? Naruko placed a hand over her seal. Like I finally fit myself. Roshi chuckled. That's a good sign. Naruko looked around the compound, the place of her family, her history, her future, and felt something new bloom inside her. Confidence. She wasn't just carrying strength anymore. She was growing into it. Keep your chakra steady, Roshi urged, her eyes bright as she felt the flaring energy of the Sanbi and the half of Kyuubi's spirit trying to break free of Naruko's control. If we lose focus, Naruko could get overwhelmed. How's it going? Utakata asked, concentrating as he guided the Sanbi's energy toward the seals. Something strange was happening. The Sanbi seemed to be pushing its energy into Roshi's suppressors, almost like it was helping her. Then, with a gentle pulse, Utakata felt himself shift back, watching in awe as the chakra seal on Naruko glowed brightly, and Kyuubi's energy finally calmed. Naruko blinked, feeling the warmth of her own energy settling. I did it, she whispered. I controlled it. Dash. A figure suddenly appeared, brushing the dust off her robes. It was Minato, looking determined but kind, as he approached the two girls. Naruko, he started, but before he could say more, a gust of wind sent him stumbling back. Naruko's eyes widened in concern, but she stayed ready. Is it possible to stop him without chaos? Yagura asked, keeping her focus. No need to worry about that, the Shinigami replied, hovering nearby with a curious glint. But I will warn you, controlling two spirits at once takes every ounce of skill. Be careful with how you balance them. Minato knelt down, speaking calmly, Naruko, you have the chance to bring Kyuubi's spirit back into harmony. But you must do it carefully, or the energy could overwhelm anyone, not to harm, but just because it's so powerful. Naruko squared her shoulders. I understand. I won't let it take over me. I'll make sure we all stay safe. She raised her hands, summoning swirling chakra around her. The room shimmered with glowing, multicolored energy as she danced between her own chakra and the spirits of the Sanbi and Kyuubi. Why are you trying to bring the Kyuubi back together? Minato asked gently. Because it belongs with itself, Yagura replied. And Naruko has the heart and courage to make it whole again. She's the only one who could do it safely. Minato smiled softly. Then I'll help guide you. Together, we can make sure the energy doesn't harm anyone. Dash. Meanwhile, the Shinigami hovered closer, eyes wide with curiosity, its presence intense but strangely awe-filled rather than frightening. Scared of losing control? It asked, tilting its head. Naruko shook her head firmly. No. I might be nervous, but I know I can do this. I've trained too long to give up now. The Shinigami's expression softened slightly, impressed. It is rare to see a soul so determined and pure. Very well. Show me your strength, then. Not to hurt, but to prove your heart is true. Naruko concentrated, feeling the energy pulse around her. Slowly, the chaotic chakra of the Kyuubi and the Sanbi began to calm, intertwining with her own. The mirror of her own reflection shimmered, not with fear, but with confidence, showing a bright, smiling Naruko surrounded by light. When the glow faded, Naruko stood tall, exhausted but triumphant. I did it. The spirits. They're calm. They trust me. Yagura clapped softly, smiling. Well done, Naruko. Not only did you control the spirits, but you showed everyone the power of courage, patience, and kindness. Even the Shinigami nodded, stepping back. You have a rare heart, Naruko. The energy you controlled today. It is a lesson in balance. Keep that heart, and you'll always succeed. Naruko exhaled, a wide grin spreading across her face. She knew the journey wasn't over, but for the first time, she truly felt the harmony of her own spirit, and of the spirit she had befriended. It's almost time, Utakata said, glancing at Yagura, who was crouched near the seal. The strange yokai energy in the room seemed to pause. Yagura's chest heaved as he suddenly sat upright, blinking rapidly. Utakata stepped forward to help, but Yagura waved her away. I've got this. Step back. He placed his hands carefully on the ground, forming precise hand seals. A soft glow spread outwards, and the old seal, the dead demon-consuming seal, began to fade. In its place appeared a woman, radiant and warm, with long, flowing red hair. Who are you? Yagura asked, startled. My name is Uzumaki Kushina, the woman said, her voice gentle but firm. And This is my daughter, Naruko. Yagura blinked, then nodded slowly. I am Tadashi Yagura, former Yondaime Mizukage. It is an honor. Kushina's gaze softened as she looked down at the faint glow where the seal was dissolving. What are you doing to her? We're helping Naruko harness her full abilities safely, Utakata explained. The energy she has inside is unusual. If it isn't balanced, it could make her feel unwell whenever she uses it. Kushina looked confused. Unwell? But she's my child. She can handle it. It's not a question of strength, Utakata said kindly. It's more like learning to ride a bicycle. She's strong enough to pedal, but she needs guidance to balance properly. Kushina's form began to shimmer, almost like mist, as she listened. I see. I just want her to be happy. She will be, Yagura assured her. Naruko is brave, clever, and kind. She's learning to think before acting, even if she's still a little headstrong at times. Kushina's eyes softened, and she glanced at Naruko, who lay peacefully asleep. She looks so calm. I hope she feels loved. Tell her I love her. And tell her to find joy in everything she does. Yagura and Utakata exchanged a glance, understanding the importance of those words. We will, Yagura promised. Kushina smiled one last time, her form gently fading. That's all I wanted. To see her happy. Guide her well. As the glow of the seal settled into a new, stable pattern, the room felt lighter, calmer. Naruko's energy, once unstable, now pulsed softly with promise, ready to grow, explore, and embrace the adventures ahead. The week after the change was almost quiet. Naruko had been resting a lot, her body adjusting to the new way she connected with Kyuubi's energy, as Utakata explained. Yagura, however, had a different feeling. When Naruko had received the remaining half of Kyuubi, something had shifted within her. He didn't get a clear look at what exactly it was, he'd been called away before he could, and Naruko's own experience during that time remained a mystery. With Naruko no longer needing to spend every waking hour in training, the group had a chance to really get to know each other. Utakata had paired up with Han, and they made a surprisingly balanced team. The gentle giant preferred steady, strong movements, while Utakata approached things with careful precision and flair. Their differences turned into strengths. Fu had been spending extra time with Roshi, hoping to learn the proper way to deal with little annoyances, as she put it. Roshi, realizing what she meant, had locked her in one of the practice houses for some special lessons. Though Fu had not been seen for a while, one could sometimes hear Roshi's frustrated yet patient shouts if they listened closely. Yagura, meanwhile, had immersed himself in studying the Uzumaki clan seals. He had always been fascinated by them, ever since becoming a Jinchūriki. He had once wondered how it was possible for a child to manage such a powerful force safely, and that curiosity had been one of the reasons Kaido-sensei had taken him as an apprentice. With Naruko's consent, he could now practice safely using a small bit of her energy for guidance. Feeling a presence, Yagura looked up from a new prototype seal he was working on, a design meant to make the Bijou barrier mobile. Across from him, Gaara stood, eyes serious but determined. I want you to teach me, Gaara said simply. Yagura raised an eyebrow. I'm already mentoring Naruko. Why should I teach you? Because Naruko. She is spirited, yes, but impatient. She won't take the time to master the sealing arts the way I could, Gaara replied. I can practice steadily. I will learn thoroughly if you give me the chance. Yagura considered this carefully. A good seals master was always willing to learn, no matter how skilled they were. Gaara's confidence and determination were clear signs of potential. Very well, Yagura said. Meet me back here in 24 hours. I'll prepare everything for your lessons. Naruko stirred and opened her eyes, taking a deep breath as she realized she was fully awake. She instinctively touched her stomach, feeling for the familiar sensation of Kyuubi's energy, only to find it calm and balanced. A wave of relief washed over her. Hey, said Utakata gently from her side. You're okay. The new seal is working beautifully. How long was I out? Naruko asked, looking at the sky, which was turning soft shades of late afternoon. A little over a week, Utakata replied. Your body needed the rest to adjust. Your energy flow is smoother now, and your reserves are steady without the constant push of Kyuubi's power. His hand glowed faintly with green chakra, shimmering as he spoke. This is natural, it helps your body settle into a healthier rhythm. Naruko nodded, though her thoughts wandered. When her energy had shifted, it had felt like a mirror of herself, almost exactly like her, but with shadowed eyes, full of confusion and fear. It had been unnerving, and she had spent some time understanding what it meant, that she was growing, that she could be strong and calm without losing herself. Utakata smiled, reading her expression. Now that you're awake, we can start learning how to control the Biju's energy, and also find ways for you to enjoy life outside of training. Naruko returned a small, determined smile. It didn't matter that the connection had changed. She would learn to work with Kyuubi's energy on her own terms, and she would grow into the kind of ninja she wanted to be, brave, kind, and unstoppable. Wrong, Roshi exclaimed, waving his hands dramatically. That is not how you greet someone. Naruko sighed, slumping slightly as she tuned out the red-haired instructor standing across from her. She had just explained, in her usual blunt way, how she recognized new people. People. They are called people. But Roshi was visibly frustrated. It had always been easier for Naruko to categorize people in her own quirky way, teammates, teachers, clients, anything to make the world make sense. And while it had worked for her in the past, it sometimes rubbed others the wrong way. Roshi, in particular, did not appreciate it. Naruko thought of herself as different, a bit like the mysterious ninja she had heard about called a Jinchūriki. Not strange, not wrong, just special. And anyone who wasn't like her? That was someone to watch, someone who might get in her way. But then she met other Jinchūriki, and they weren't at all like she expected. They laughed, they joked, and, somehow, they became friends with people she had labeled annoyances. It was confusing. Especially the one called Uzumaki Naruto. He was bold, a little mischievous, and somehow, Naruko found herself wanting to impress him, even though she had no idea why. She was still learning how to interact with humans, and the rules were tricky. Introduce yourself politely, Roshi repeated, his voice firm but patient. Say your name, bow slightly, and make eye contact. Naruko practiced, but every attempt made her feel awkward. She wanted to do everything perfectly, to show that she was strong, smart, and capable, but somehow, it always came out wrong. Roshi, however, wasn't giving up. He had been a teacher for decades and had seen all kinds of stubborn students. Naruko might be a handful, but she was also talented and kind-hearted in her own way. Are you even listening to me? Roshi asked, tapping her shoulder gently. Naruko snapped back to attention. She nodded earnestly, determined to learn, even if it felt like the rules contradicted everything she thought she knew. Roshi smiled slightly. He knew Naruko had a big heart and a bright mind. It would take time, but eventually, she would understand that people weren't obstacles, they were friends, teammates, and fellow ninjas to support and grow with. Naruko looked up at him, determination sparkling in her eyes. She might not get everything right immediately, but she knew one thing for sure, she would keep trying, no matter how confusing it was, because she wanted to be someone others could rely on. And maybe, just maybe, she'd finally figure out how to make a certain mischievous boy notice her efforts. Utakata stepped back, quickly forming a small protective bubble around himself as the stew he was learning to make erupted in a colorful explosion, sending chunks of vegetables and bits of tofu flying across the kitchen. She had been so close. Sighing, Utakata let the bubble dissipate before carefully turning off the gas on the stove, a trick she had learned after nearly burning down the kitchen during an earlier experiment, and began tidying up the mess. A movement behind her announced the arrival of the person who had been teaching her, Han. Their eyes met for the briefest of moments before Han simply lowered his head, turned, and walked out of the kitchen. Utakata nearly stumbled. Normally, Han would coldly declare her hopeless at cooking, telling her to stop wasting her time. And then she would clean up, try again, and slowly improve. But Han leaving without a word? That was something entirely new. Switching to the ceiling to reach some stray bits of stew, Utakata crouched with her cleaning rags in hand. Maybe I should just ask him to show me by example? She thought. Getting Han to open up outside of training had been almost impossible, he was far too private for anyone but his closest companion. Not that I'm any better, she admitted to herself. I'm not closed off like Han, but I don't exactly spill everything about myself either. Her thoughts drifted to Naruko. She was far too open and trusting for her own good. Naruko would share everything she knew, even things she shouldn't, all because she saw the kindness in others. Utakata admired that about her, but it also worried the older ninja in the group. Naruko had grown up in Konoha under circumstances that left her with little guidance. Many older ninja had whispered about it when the teens were away, concerned about how open-hearted and trusting she was. And while Naruko didn't know it, those traits were her greatest strength, but they also made her vulnerable in ways Utakata had seen too many times before. Shaking off the heavy thoughts, Utakata focused back on the kitchen. Soon, it gleamed spotless. Han appeared again, silently inspecting her work. Utakata said, trying a playful tone, if you let me help with the cooking more often, I'd probably learn faster. Han's response was firm but measured, you will only do what I ask, exactly as I ask it. No shortcuts. No improvisation. If you can do that, I will consider teaching you more. Utakata grinned to herself. Sometimes a little playfulness went a long way, even if it didn't always yield the result you expected. Once she had left the kitchen, Han lingered, surveying the spotless counters. He couldn't help but feel a flicker of pride. Utakata was improving, slowly, but surely. The rakubi container was learning. Stepping outside, Han wandered into the garden, sunlight glimmering off the protective barrier around the compound. He knelt and began weeding and tending to the flowers, letting the rhythm soothe him. Gardening was a secret pleasure of his, a way to care for something and watch it grow strong. He almost didn't notice Utakata approaching. I didn't know you gardened, she said. Han paused. It's not something I usually share. Utakata nodded. Right. But this garden. It's beautiful. And I know a few herbs and shrubs that could make it even better. Han raised an eyebrow, impressed despite himself. Usually, someone skilled in one area didn't necessarily have finesse in another. Utakata, terrible at cooking but knowledgeable about gardening, was a mystery he might never fully unravel. Perhaps. We can work on it together, Han said quietly. He wasn't usually one to socialize, but this was different. Maybe, just maybe, he could find a genuine friend in Utakata. And somewhere, not far away, Naruko's cheerful energy hummed through the compound, reminding them both why patience, trust, and care were worth every effort. Naruko studied the seal in front of her intently, her fingers tracing the intricate lines as if trying to memorize their every curve. She occasionally glanced at the scroll beside her, which explained the basics of seals, why certain lines were placed in certain ways and how small changes could make a huge difference. She only needed the scroll when something appeared unfamiliar or unusually complex. Naruko felt a quiet sense of pride at having such a sharp memory. Just a year ago, she never would have imagined she could absorb so much information so quickly. She had changed a lot since meeting Gaara. Before, she might have ignored someone, or grown frustrated if they annoyed her. Now, she found herself wanting to understand people, to learn what made them tick. She still took her training seriously, but she discovered that building friendships could be just as important as mastering her abilities. Her spare time was spent reading, experimenting with small seals, and exploring the endless possibilities of chakra. She even tried to adapt her techniques to help with concentration and rest. Sleep had always been a tricky thing for her mind was too full of ideas and energy, but focusing on sealing techniques gave her a kind of calm she had never known. Closing the scroll, Naruko carefully organized her notes for her mentor, Yagura. Today's assignment had been simple but important: study the seal, understand each component, and note what it could do. She felt a small thrill of excitement. Today's work was another step toward mastering her craft. Yagura looked over the neat stack of notes Naruko had laid out. You've clearly studied this carefully. Most beginners wouldn't think to approach a seal this way. His voice held a mix of respect and curiosity. Thank you, Naruko said softly, a little surprised at herself. Gratitude wasn't a word she used often, but it felt right here. Yagura hid a smile and nodded, impressed by her meticulousness. Teaching a student with such promise was always a challenge, but he wanted to make sure Naruko's potential in sealing arts could grow without limit. As Yagura returned to his own studies, he read about the long history of the Uzumaki clan. The scroll told of a sage whose wisdom and courage had shaped the world, and of the many generations that came after her. The story spoke of hope, determination, and the idea that anyone, no matter their beginnings, could leave a lasting mark on the world. Naruko, meanwhile, continued her work quietly, lost in thought. She imagined all the worlds she could explore in her mind, all the ways she could use seals to help others and protect her friends. Though some of the techniques seemed complicated or even magical, she was determined to master them. Someday, she thought, she would create seals that could bring safety, joy, and peace to everyone around her. And maybe, just maybe, she would finally find the kind of rest where dreams were filled with wonder instead of worries. For now, though, Naruko focused on the lines and curves, the gentle hum of chakra flowing through her hands, and the satisfaction of learning something new every day. A promise beneath the quiet bridge. Yagura held the old scroll carefully, his expression calm but determined. The markings on it shimmered softly, not as a warning of doom, but as a reminder of responsibility. The prophecy was not something to fear, it was something to guide. I will make sure this future is shaped with care, he said gently. With steady resolve, Yagura began preparing special teaching seals, tools meant to help others understand their inner strength safely and responsibly. These seals were designed for learning, cooperation, and balance. One day, he hoped, this knowledge would be shared openly so that everyone could grow stronger together. No matter what, the future would be shaped by kindness, wisdom, and choice. The quiet of Tenchi Bridge. Tenchi Bridge rested at the southern edge of the land of valleys, peaceful and still. Time had softened the marks of the past, and nature had reclaimed much of the area. The bridge now stood as a quiet place for reflection rather than travel. Naruko had once crossed a bridge like this during her training journey. She remembered how she had learned that true strength came not from winning alone, but from understanding others. That lesson stayed with her, guiding her every step forward. She was growing, not just as a shinobi, but as a person. A meeting of minds. On this quiet bridge, Sasori arrived not with anger, but with curiosity. He had spent much time rethinking his ideas, realizing that clever planning worked best when paired with adaptability and patience. His puppet creation, Hiruko, had been carefully rebuilt, not for conflict, but for demonstration and learning. "It has been a long time," said a cloaked figure stepping forward. 5 years, Sasori replied evenly. The cloaked figure lowered the hood, revealing Kabuto, who offered a polite nod. "All is calm," Kabuto said. No one followed. "I came only to share information." They spoke quietly about moving research bases, about staying flexible, and about how important it was to learn from mistakes rather than repeat them. Hidden nearby, Orochimaru listened, not with ill intent, but with interest. He had always believed knowledge should be questioned, even challenged. Eventually, Orochimaru stepped forward openly. "This is quite the discussion," he said lightly. "May I join?" Instead of tension, there was an exchange of ideas. Sasori demonstrated a clever mechanism in Hiruko, Kabuto shared observations, and Orochimaru offered thoughtful critiques. It became less of a confrontation and more of a surprising workshop beneath the open sky. Sasori nodded slowly. "Recent experiences have taught me something important," he said. "Growth comes from adapting, not repeating old paths." Kabuto smiled, adjusting his glasses. "I think we all learned something today." A brighter path forward. Far away, Naruko trained with focus and heart, unaware that others, too, were choosing better paths. She believed in learning, teamwork, and never giving up on herself or others. And though many stories were still unfolding, one rule always remained unbroken in this world. There was no nudity anywhere, no harm, no cruelty, only growth, creativity, and hope. Naruko's journey continued, bright and full of promise. Naruko blinked as the unusual scene unfolded before her. A tall, mysterious figure with pale skin and a sly smile stood at the center of the bridge, while another, slightly frantic figure tried to move but seemed frozen in place. "Oh?" the tall figure said, tilting her head with curiosity. "I wasn't expecting that." The frozen figure's arms twitched, reaching toward something behind him, but he couldn't quite move properly. "Watch closely," said another voice, calm and precise. "This is one of my favorite secret techniques." Naruko crouched low, ready to react. In the blink of an eye, wooden projectiles sprang from the ground, shooting toward the tall figure. But with a graceful sidestep, she avoided them effortlessly. The wooden missiles exploded in harmless sparks, scattering in every direction and shaking the bridge slightly. "Impressive," the figure said with a quiet laugh. "I almost didn't see that coming." From the other side of the bridge, huge wooden pillars grew from the cliffs, creating a protective barrier that prevented any further chaos. Naruko marveled at the cleverness. It wasn't just about strength, it was about ingenuity. The frozen figure groaned. "What do you want from me?" "I'm just here to learn," the other replied. "And maybe to see how clever you really are. But first, let's see if you can handle a little teamwork challenge." Naruko's eyes widened. She loved challenges, especially when it came to helping others or outsmarting clever opponents. Using her agility, she leapt across the broken sections of the bridge, positioning herself strategically. She could feel the rhythm of the wooden barriers, the playful movements of the other figures, and the slight tremor of the bridge itself. At one end of the bridge, a figure with a cat-shaped mask moved gracefully, and at the other, a falcon-masked ninja prepared to test their skills. They weren't fighting, at least, not in a harmful way. It was a contest of strategy, speed, and creativity. "Your movements are clever," said the tall figure, impressed as she dodged another harmless projectile. "Not many can think this quickly." Naruko smiled to herself. That was the point, ninja skills weren't just about power, they were about clever thinking, observation, and helping everyone find a safe solution. The wooden projectiles and barriers continued to move, almost like a giant puzzle. Naruko realized she could guide the falcon and cat masked ninjas to positions that would protect everyone, keeping the bridge stable and preventing anyone from slipping. Slowly, the frozen figure began to relax.
I think I can move now, he said, testing his balance.
Exactly, said Naruko, landing lightly on the bridge. Sometimes all you need is a little teamwork, and a little imagination. The tall figure clapped her hands, smiling. Well done, Naruko. You've shown that brains and kindness are just as powerful as any jutsu. With that, the bridge settled into calm stability, the wooden pillars standing like friendly guardians, and the ninjas, once tense and wary, now laughed and shared nods of respect. Naruko looked around, feeling proud. She hadn't just solved a tricky situation, she had reminded everyone that clever thinking, courage, and friendship were the true marks of a great ninja. Naruko crouched on the edge of the wooden bridge, her bright orange jacket fluttering in the breeze. She could see the mischievous trickster Kabuto trying to sneak past, and with a clever flick of her kunai, she launched a harmless net that wrapped him up in colorful ribbons, holding him in place just long enough to move on. Now, for the wood user. She muttered, scanning the area with her sharp blue eyes. Across from her, Sasori's puppets lined up in perfect formation, their wooden joints creaking as they moved. So many puppets again, Sasori? Naruko asked with a grin, tilting her head. I thought you'd be trying something new. I did, Sasori replied, his voice calm but confident. As the smoke cleared, Naruko could see 20 puppets, all dressed in little black cloaks, standing ready to block her path. But this formation is all I need to challenge you. Naruko smiled. We'll see about that. She twirled her staff, tapping it on the ground twice. From the forest behind her, dozens of giant wooden snakes, crafted from fallen branches, slithered toward the puppets. But before they reached the line, one of Sasori's puppets, a tiny wooden woman, opened her mouth, releasing a cloud of sparkling dust that harmlessly scattered the wooden snakes in all directions. Clever, Naruko said, impressed, but she wasn't done yet. With a quick hand movement, her puppets shifted positions. One tall puppet in front used its large wooden hands to lift and redirect the floating ribbons, while the smaller puppet behind created a glittery fog to confuse Sasori's puppets even more. Sasori's face fell just slightly. You've really improved, he admitted, though his voice had that familiar competitive edge. I've been practicing, Naruko said proudly. She tapped her staff, sending a wave of wind toward the puppets, not to hurt them, just enough to make them wobble and spin in midair. Strategy isn't just about power. It's about thinking ahead. Sasori raised his hands, signaling 2 puppets to move in for a coordinated strike. But Naruko's puppets had already anticipated it. The puppet with the sword hand blocked gently with a padded shield, while the swordsman puppet performed a twirling spin, knocking the others off balance with harmless bounces. Impressive, Sasori admitted, stepping back and adjusting his stance. You've mastered timing and prediction. I didn't think you'd be able to outmaneuver me like this. Naruko's grin widened. I'm not done yet. With a clap of her hands, all her puppets spun in a coordinated circle, creating a dazzling display of movement that looked like a dance more than a fight. The puppets and Sasori's formation swirled together, colliding and spinning, but in the end, everyone remained intact, just a little dizzy. Looks like we're evenly matched, Sasori said with a small smile. But I'm curious. How did you come up with all these new tactics? Naruko tapped her staff against her shoulder, thinking. Sometimes you win by strength. Sometimes by trickery. But the best way is by learning from everyone around you, and never giving up, no matter how tricky things get. Sasori tilted his head, nodding slowly. Then perhaps we'll have to practice together again sometime. You've certainly earned my respect, Naruko. Naruko beamed. Anytime. But next time, don't underestimate my puppets. And with a cheerful laugh, she leapt from the bridge, her puppets following in a coordinated, harmless cascade of spinning wood and sparkling dust, ready for the next challenge. Again, Naruko? Her opponent asked, a sly grin on his face. Don't think I haven't figured out your plan. Then you already know what comes next, Naruko said confidently, her hands glowing with chakra. She released her special scroll, and in an instant, dozens of colorful, magical shadow puppets sprang to life around her. Boom! A dazzling burst of light and sparkling energy filled the area, scattering harmless smoke and leaves into the air. The nearby bridge trembled from the force of the magic, but instead of destruction, it transformed. The wooden planks shimmered and rearranged into a playful, swirling pattern of light. As the sparkling dust settled, Naruko's opponent stayed on his toes. He knew Naruko well enough to realize that even her biggest tricks were creative challenges, not meant to truly harm anyone. Either you've vanished, or you're hiding, he said, scanning the magical clearing. Why do you think I transformed your little puppet? Naruko appeared, perched atop a shimmering bridge fragment. The puppet he had been controlling had been turned into a harmless, bouncy toy. And I'll turn the rest into friendly helpers if you don't cooperate. You're still as clever as ever, Naruko, her opponent said, shaking his head. I hope to see if I could outsmart you before resorting to all this magical chaos. Is that so? Naruko tilted her head, curious but cautious. Yes, but I see now that this is the only way to keep the game fair, he admitted. He lifted his hands, readying his own playful magic. Suddenly, a flurry of bright, sparkling puppets shot into the sky, lifting him onto a giant floating bird-shaped cloud. That's some spectacular art. Naruko's teammate, Deidara, cheered from the side. I didn't think you'd save your best moves. I didn't, he muttered, quietly taking a handful of shimmering clay. Then, with a dramatic flourish, he formed a giant, glittering statue of himself, completely harmless but dazzling in its scale. Let's see him perform next. Deidara clapped, and the glowing statue twirled in the air, sending sparkles everywhere. Naruko carefully resealed her magical puppets and tended to her teammate's scraped arm with a healing spell. We'll be out of range soon, Deidara said, sending the bird cloud soaring across the sky. The sparkling figure spun and danced, then gently floated to the ground, leaving a trail of glittering sparks that looked like a rainbow. At the center of the dazzling chaos, the only signs of the challenge were the sparkling bridge and the playful, transformed puppets. Suddenly, the ground shimmered, and a mound of magical energy rose, lifting Naruko's opponent onto a soft, glowing platform. He emerged, dusting off harmless glitter from his clothes, smiling wryly. Well, that was quite the spectacle, he admitted. I didn't expect to be outsmarted in such a colorful way. Naruko grinned, her bright eyes sparkling. It's all about creativity, teamwork, and fun, she said. Winning isn't about defeating someone, it's about seeing who can make the most amazing magic. And with that, the magical battlefield was alive with laughter, sparkling puppets, and clouds of colorful energy, as Naruko and her friends prepared for their next adventure, full of clever tricks, teamwork, and endless imagination. Finish up. Kakuzu grumbled. Leader's expecting us. I don't like this part any more than you, but Jashin says it has to be done. Hidan called back, crouching amid the rubble of what used to be Kumo's old training grounds. The area was a mess, rocks and debris scattered everywhere, but Naruko wasn't afraid. Their target, well, more like a challenge set up by Hidan, was standing on one of the few walls still intact. She was an average height, with a strong stance that made it clear she wasn't easily intimidated. Her tan skin glowed in the sunlight, her blonde hair braided neatly but with a few strands falling around her face. She looked determined, not helpless. Kakuzu frowned. I don't care, he muttered. Hidan raised an eyebrow. This is the first real test we've been able to track down in months, Hidan said. Leader wants to see how it goes personally. Naruko's eyes narrowed. She had been practicing for moments like this her whole life. Even if these Akatsuki members were serious, she knew she could outsmart them. After all, she had a knack for thinking outside the box and using clever tricks, rather than relying on brute strength. Utakata and Gaara arrived, standing on the outskirts of the ruins. The two Akatsuki members were busy with their odd setup, but Naruko wasn't about to wait. She must be like us, Gaara said quietly, his black sand swirling slightly in anticipation. Given the strange situation that drew us here, yes, Utakata replied. So, we help her? Obviously, Gaara said firmly. It's our duty, and I have a score to settle with the silver-haired one. Okay, Utakata said with a small laugh. I'll distract the masked one, get Naruko, and you keep the other busy while she makes her move. Sound good? Gaara's dark eyes fixed on him, and Utakata resisted the urge to flinch. Yes, Gaara said. Naruko smiled, adjusting her headband. She could feel the energy of her friends around her, and she knew she wasn't alone. This wasn't about fighting, it was about teamwork, clever thinking, and showing that even the trickiest situations could be solved with patience and smarts. And with that, Naruko stepped forward, ready to face the challenge head-on, her mind buzzing with ideas, her heart steady, and her determination shining brighter than ever. The sun peeked over the horizon, casting a warm golden glow across the training grounds. Naruko adjusted her bright orange headband and tightened her ninja sandals. Today, she was determined to prove herself, not by defeating anyone, but by mastering a new jutsu she had been practicing for weeks. Across the field, her friend Gaara was practicing with his sand, shaping it into playful, moving figures that danced across the ground. "You're up early today," he said, smiling. "Trying a new technique?" Naruko grinned. "Yep. And this one's going to be awesome. Watch closely." With a swirl of her hands, she summoned a glowing ball of energy, bright as the morning sun. It floated above her palm, humming softly. Before she could test it further, a pair of shadows appeared at the far edge of the field. 2 new challengers had arrived, one tall, one short, and they weren't here to play tag. Naruko's ears perked up, and she ran forward with her usual boundless energy. "Ready for a friendly spar?" Naruko called, her ponytail bouncing as she landed lightly on the ground. She didn't carry any weapons, her skills were all about cleverness, agility, and her chakra control. The taller challenger made a slow, dramatic bow. "We've heard about your skills, Naruko," they said politely, "and we've come to see if you've really improved." Naruko smirked, spinning into a ready stance. "You'll see. But no hard feelings, I only fight fair." Gaara chuckled from the sidelines. "Remember, Naruko, it's about strategy, not speed alone." The shorter challenger lunged forward, but Naruko was already 2 steps ahead. She leapt into the air, twisting mid-jump, and created a sparkling water clone to mimic her movements. The clone danced ahead, blocking harmlessly while the real Naruko circled around to flank. Her energy ball flared brightly, and with a precise hand sign, it split into smaller glowing orbs that zipped toward the challengers, but only fast enough to tickle them and knock their hats off. They stumbled, laughing, and Naruko landed gracefully. "You're getting better," said the taller challenger, smiling. "But can you handle teamwork?" Naruko's eyes lit up. "Of course." With a clap of her hands, she combined her energy orbs with Gaara's dancing sand figures, creating a dazzling display of light and swirling sand. The challengers tried to keep up, dodging playful orbs that bounced harmlessly off the ground and sand shapes that moved like little guardians. After a few minutes, everyone collapsed onto the soft grass, laughing and breathing heavily. Naruko grinned from ear to ear. "That was amazing. I almost had you caught with the sand tornado combo." Gaara nodded. "You've really grown. Not just in power, but in cleverness too. That's what makes a great ninja." Naruko's eyes sparkled as she looked at the horizon. "Next time, I'll make it even better. And maybe I'll teach you my new move, the Rainbow Leap." The challengers clapped. "We can't wait." And with that, the sun climbed higher, casting warmth over the Ninja Academy. Naruko ran off, practicing flips and spins, her laughter echoing across the training grounds, a reminder that being a ninja was just as much about friendship, creativity, and heart as it was about strength. Naruko watched the strange creature that was Kakuzu from a safe distance, keeping on the move. Each of those masks seemed to pulse with a different elemental energy, except for the earthy brown one, which seemed to anchor the others like the calm center of a storm. 4 masks in total floated around him. Naruko passed by one of her water clones, a simple one, created mostly to distract Kakuzu. Her special supplies of magical chakra potions were running low, and using them carelessly would be wasteful. So she relied on the air around her, drawing on a little bit of the Rakubi's yokai essence to lend her clone extra strength. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to keep the 5 masks' attention while she formulated a plan. There were 5 hearts in total, including Kakuzu's own. The bird mask had already been neutralized, and with it, the wind element heart. That meant that if a mask was removed from play, its power was lost too. Naruko smiled. Now she had a plan. She sent her water clones forward. They floated, darted, and shimmered, drawing the fire of all 3 remaining masks while Naruko prepared her real move. The masks reacted instantly, their forms twisting and stretching into shapes that represented their powers. To her right, a tiger-shaped mask lunged. Its black thread-like energy vibrated with strength. Behind Kakuzu, a towering bull mask stood on 2 legs, its eyes like empty midnight pools staring straight at Naruko. To her left, a hunched frog-shaped mask crouched low, its wide mouth opening as it hummed a deep, resonant note. Naruko took a deep breath. She called on the Rakubi's energy, her body cloaking itself in the warm, shimmering aura of version 2. Her form shimmered crimson and black, 6 soft tails flicking gently behind her, filling the clearing with a radiant, protective power. The masks reacted instantly, releasing a flash of energy toward her. But Naruko's quick thinking and control of the Rakubi's yokai essence allowed her to redirect the bursts harmlessly into the sky, sending sparkling trails of magical energy across the mountains. Impressive, Kakuzu's voice said, calm and calculating. Exactly, a small voice echoed from behind one of the masks, and to Naruko's surprise, miniature versions of the Rakubi appeared, each no bigger than a doll. They darted around the masks, neutralizing the dark energy threads with tiny bursts of crimson light, harmlessly dismantling the intimidating forms. One by one, the tiger, bull, and frog masks dissolved into harmless black and red sparkles, leaving only Kakuzu, who looked thoroughly amazed. From a distance, Gaara had been preparing a defense, ready to lend a hand if needed. He watched in awe as Naruko's mastery of the yokai energy created a dazzling display, removing obstacles without causing harm. The mountain air hummed with magic, and for a moment, it seemed like the valley itself was holding its breath. When the battle was done, Naruko stepped back, releasing her version 2 cloak. The mini Rakubi scampered beside her, tail flicking playfully. That was a bit dramatic, don't you think? Gaara said, his usual calm voice tinged with amusement. Naruko chuckled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I had to be sure Kakuzu wouldn't cause trouble for anyone else. She reached out and touched the glowing tails of the Rakubi, and a wave of gentle healing energy washed over the valley. The scars from the battle faded, flowers sprouted in patches where the energy touched, and even the streams bubbled a little brighter. Gaara adjusted his scarf, smiling faintly. Well, you certainly have a way of making even a fight look magical. Naruko grinned. I try. Let's head back to camp, I'm sure Fu will want to hear all about this adventure. The two ninjas moved toward the northeast, toward the snow-capped mountains of the Land of Iron. Behind them, the valley sparkled, alive with light and magic, a reminder that even the most dangerous challenges could be overcome with skill, creativity, and care. In the bustling streets of Konoha, a lone figure darted between the sparse crowds, her bright orange scarf trailing behind her like a comet's tail. Naruko Uzumaki, with her unmistakable spiky blonde hair tied in twin tails, moved with the energy and optimism that had always set her apart. Unlike many others in the village, she seemed unbothered by the tense atmosphere that clung to the market district like morning fog. She had returned to Konoha not as a reckless academy student, but as a young ninja determined to make a difference. Her blue eyes sparkled with mischief and determination as she balanced a small crate of supplies on her head while weaving past stalls. Hey, careful! A merchant called, though his voice carried a note of amusement rather than annoyance. Naruko laughed and tilted the crate slightly, steadying it. Don't worry. I've got this. Naruko's mission today wasn't dangerous in the way her old training missions had been, it was a community mission, helping to rebuild some of the stalls that had been damaged in recent storms and ensuring that everyone's supplies were safe. But to Naruko, every task, no matter how small, was a chance to prove herself, and more importantly, to bring a smile to someone's face. She spotted Konohamaru, Moigi, and Udon in the distance, struggling with an overly tall stack of baskets. Without a second thought, she sprinted toward them, her scarf flapping wildly behind her. Need a hand? She called cheerfully. Konohamaru blinked, surprised. Naruko. You're back? Naruko landed lightly beside them, adjusting the crate she had carried. Of course. I never really left, you know. I just took a little detour to learn some new things. Her grin was bright and contagious, and for the first time in weeks, the three friends felt the tension in the market lift slightly. Moigi folded her arms, trying to hide her excitement. You learned new things? That actually sounds useful for once. Udon, struggling with his crates, looked like he wanted to fall over with relief. Finally, some help that doesn't involve me almost breaking my back. Naruko rolled up her sleeves and began organizing the baskets with surprising skill and speed. She moved like a whirlwind, her energy so infectious that soon the entire group was laughing as they worked together. Even the nearby merchants watched in admiration as the young ninja orchestrated the chaos into calm. See? Naruko said proudly as the last basket was set down neatly. Being a ninja isn't just about fighting. It's about helping people, too. Even if it's just something small. Konohamaru couldn't help but nod, feeling inspired. You've really changed, Naruko. You're stronger. But in a good way, not scary strong. Naruko grinned, a mischievous twinkle in her eye. That's right. Strength isn't just about power, it's about heart. And speaking of hearts, I think someone owes me a snack for all this hard work. The group burst into laughter, the tension that had hung over the market like a shadow finally lifting. And though the city outside still hummed with caution and unease, there was one small corner of Konoha where hope and joy had returned, All because one determined ninja had decided to help. Tsunade leaned back in her chair, eyes scanning the report that Jiraiya had handed her. 2 Anbu operatives had gone missing while tracking an unusual visitor through the Land of Fire. From the traces found, faint remnants of Orochimaru's snakeskin jutsu, it seemed the traveler had crossed paths with him. But no matter how thoroughly they searched, there were no signs of the missing Anbu, the stranger, or even any of Orochimaru's hideouts. Even stranger, the surrounding forest was unnervingly quiet. Nests and burrows hinted that animals should have been around, but the woods were empty. It was possible that the mysterious visitor, or someone with puppet techniques, had scared away all life, just as the ruined Tenchi Bridge suggested the use of deadly puppets. Tsunade let out a heavy sigh. She dreaded having to tell the Yamanaka clan that their own Yamanaka Fu was missing. But even more worrying was the thought that Tenzo, the talented would-release ninja, might be in enemy hands. If the wrong person had control over his abilities, the consequences could be disastrous. She shook her head. She couldn't even imagine it. Her mind wandered to someone else. Naruko. The young girl with bright blonde hair had last been seen by Tenzo and his squad, unconscious but alive, near a well-traveled trade route. The plan had been for Naruko's sealed chakra to stabilize her internal yokai, so that the exhausting journey toward the route would keep her powers in check and ensure her safety. The hope was that the journey would leave her near a friendly border town, where Jiraiya could look after her. But Naruko hadn't arrived. Jiraiya's spies reported a figure in dark Akatsuki attire holding someone matching Naruko's description. By the time he had tried to intervene, he had gotten distracted by enthusiastic fans in a border town, a situation Tsunade had made sure he remembered, not gently. Since then, no one had seen Naruko. Tsunade's heart sank at the thought, and though officially she could not declare her missing student gone, the gnawing worry in her chest told her the truth. She glanced down at the drawer holding Naruko's headband and the small necklace she had given her. It had been meant as a protective charm, a symbol of trust, but now, it felt like a reminder of all the ways things could go wrong. And Naruko, full of dreams and hope, had not yet reached them. She had let herself care, and now that care made the fear all the sharper. Tsunade closed her eyes for a moment, thinking back to the day she had reluctantly agreed on the banishment plan. She had hoped it would protect Naruko, not put her in more danger. But now she had to find a way to bring her back safely. She would not let Naruko's dream of becoming Hokage, or simply of growing up in a safe, happy village, fade away. Outside, the winter air was cool but calm, a deceptive peace. Tsunade knew a storm was coming. And the question in her mind was whether the village would be ready for it. Far away, in the rainy city of Amigakure, Madara moved through the streets with purpose. His eyes were hidden, but his thoughts burned with plans. Knowledge of missing operatives, of the village's secret powers, and of the Jinchūriki who had slipped through their grasp had fueled his strategy. Each piece of information brought him closer to his goals. He passed through the high tower in the south, where his subordinates awaited, and stepped into the room where Konan and Tendo, Nagato's trusted body, were present. Inside, he would coordinate his next moves, always calculating, always several steps ahead. But somewhere far away, in Konoha, a glimmer of hope remained. Naruko was out there. Strong, clever, and determined, she would not be broken so easily. And when the time came, she would return, not just to survive, but to shine. A gentle turning of paths, Naruko's story. In a quiet stone hall shaped by echoing arches, 3 leaders gathered for an important discussion. Rain tapped softly outside, sounding like thoughtful fingers on glass. Madara stepped into the room as if he belonged there, his posture calm and measured. He greeted Konan and Nagato with polite formality, standing at a respectful distance. His voice was steady, not unkind, but serious. "We are at a crossroads," Madara said. "Many gifted guardians across the lands are learning to rely on one another. Cooperation is growing." Konan listened carefully, folding her hands. Nagato, speaking through a calm and thoughtful presence, replied, "And you believe guidance is needed?" "Yes," Madara answered. "Any challenge ahead must be met with wisdom, not force. The wrong choice could upset the balance we are trying to protect." Konan nodded. "Then we must choose carefully who represents us." Madara looked toward the rain again. "Exactly. Only those who value patience and understanding should move forward." After a quiet moment, he added, "There is also a gathering of leaders planned in the Land of Iron, among the 3 Wolves Mountains. Ideas will be shared there, and voices heard. You will attend with my guidance, not to disrupt, but to listen and learn." The room felt lighter after that, as if the rain itself approved. Elsewhere, a new resolve. Far to the north, in a peaceful valley filled with soft wind and tall grass, a young traveler stepped out of a small training hall. Inside, old scrolls and broken practice tools rested quietly, their lessons already learned. The traveler adjusted her clothing neatly, comfortable, practical, and always respectful, and tied her belongings securely. Her dark hair framed a thoughtful face, eyes bright with curiosity and ambition. "This is only the beginning," she whispered with a hopeful smile. "I will grow stronger by learning, not by taking." She practiced focusing her energy, watching it change colors like a sunset. Red faded gently into clear light, showing control and calm. Her name was Naruko Uzumaki. Naruko believed deeply in kindness, effort, and never giving up on herself or others. She trained every day not to outshine anyone, but to stand beside them. She knew that true strength came from helping friends, listening carefully, and choosing the right path even when it was difficult. As she looked toward the horizon, Naruko felt excited, not afraid, about what lay ahead. "I'll become someone who brings people together," she said confidently. "That's my goal." And with that, Naruko stepped forward, ready to grow. Naruko groaned softly as she slowly came to, her hand brushing against something soft. She blinked, trying to focus, but the sudden light made her squint tightly. Hands gently guided hers back down to her sides, and a calm voice spoke. "Easy there," the voice said. "You were knocked out, but you're safe now. I and my friends brought you here." Naruko's mind raced, trying to remember what had happened. She had been on a mission, trying to stop a band of mischief makers who had been sneaking supplies from the Hidden Leafs warehouses. She remembered running through narrow halls, thinking fast, and then nothing. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sight of the people around her. None wore the black and red cloaks she'd been told to watch for. Instead, there were 3 teens, one with bright blonde hair and playful whisker-like marks on her cheeks, another with striking red hair and thoughtful green eyes, and a teal-haired girl whose eyes shimmered like gemstones. Holding her steady were a few older mentors, a tall figure in steam-powered armor, a short, easygoing man in a turtleneck, a silvery-haired gentleman with a quiet but strong presence, and a slim man whose hair shadowed part of his face. Naruko's body relaxed slightly. These weren't enemies. The blonde teen finally spoke. "Done struggling?" she asked, her tone teasing but gentle. Naruko nodded, letting herself be set down on the soft cot. "How?" Naruko started, her voice trailing off. The red-headed teen smiled softly. "We've been keeping an eye on you," she said. "You got yourself into a tricky situation, but you didn't give up. That's what makes a ninja strong." Naruko felt a warmth in her chest. She had been so sure she was alone, that no one could help her, but here were people who believed in her. The teal-haired girl crouched beside her. "You've got a lot of power," she said, her voice gentle. "But it's not just about strength. It's about thinking ahead, being smart, and knowing when to ask for help. That's what makes you truly capable." Naruko looked at the 3 teens and the 4 adults holding her. For the first time since the mission went wrong, she felt a spark of hope. She could learn from them. She could grow. She didn't have to face everything alone. "Thank you," Naruko said, a small smile forming. I'll do better next time. I'll be strong enough to protect everyone, just like all of you." The blonde teen grinned. "That's the spirit. Now, rest up. Tomorrow, we train. And we'll make sure nothing like this ever catches you off guard again." Naruko's heart swelled with determination. She knew the road ahead would be challenging, but with friends by her side, she felt ready for anything. Utakata and I were sent to investigate the strange yokai activity as we passed through the forest. Once we arrived, both of us confronted Akatsuki, and Utakata managed to subdue one of them before helping me recover from the injuries I had sustained. "That wasn't easy," the red-headed man explained, falling silent after a moment. Then Utakata spoke up, drawing my attention. "Healing you took some time. You had quite a few injuries, and your hands were particularly strained. You should take it easy for a few days. Just because I helped doesn't mean you should rush back into action." I raised my right hand, staring at my palm, still tingling from Utakata's healing touch. Such skill, even Tsunade of the Sannin would have been impressed. "How did you do that? Not even the best medics could manage something like this." "The Rakubi's yokai has amazing restorative power," Utakata explained, nodding slightly toward Naruko, who stood nearby with her bright blonde hair bouncing. "The only thing that comes close is her regenerative energy." "I'm awesome that way," Naruko said with a confident grin. "Right," Utakata replied, ignoring her bragging, and turned back to me. "Anyway, we need you to travel with us for now." "Wah," Rakubi? I asked, blinking. I had kept up with the news and missions, but this comment threw me off. Yeah, Utakata said, smiling faintly. I'm the one who protects it. Where else would it be? I was stunned, and it showed. The group seemed to notice and looked at me with curiosity and concern. You sure she's okay? Asked the girl next to Naruko, and Naruko shot her a playful glare. Of course not, Utakata said, gesturing toward me as I sat on the cot. To the world, we've disappeared after the Akatsuki's last sightings. Most people probably think we're gone. The armored giant beside him added, seems like you need a little practice reading people. The situation isn't always as it seems. I frowned but stayed quiet, letting Naruko tug her companion away with a mischievous grin. Nothing below the waist. The red-headed man called out at them. Neither of you are old enough to be parents. Naruko laughed, half-heartedly protesting being pulled away. It finally clicked for me what was happening around us. So, you're the missing Jinchūriki, I said, earning nods from the group. Utakata has the Rakubi, he confirmed. And the rest of us? Names, Roshi said, giving a small wave. I have the Inbi. Han, Gobi, said the tall man beside him. I'm Roshi's younger brother. Kurosana no Gara. Shukaku, said the teenage redhead, and then looked at the smallest member of the group. Kadashi Yagura. Sanbi, came the reply. Hearing this, I blinked. But, I thought. That's what people think, Yagura said with a small, rueful smile. I haven't seen any reason to correct them. I nodded and asked my next question. And one of the two who went off is the Nanabi Jinchūriki? Yeah. Fu is, Roshi confirmed. You didn't ask about the Gaki, though. They're not a Jinchūriki, I said firmly. The Kyubi Jinchūriki is still in Konoha, right? The Gaki's got a clever cover story, Roshi said with a grin. Konoha lied? I asked, astonished, brushing a lock of hair from my face. Why would they do that? And why aren't any of you missing? Ah, that's all connected, Utakata said, taking control of the conversation. They separated Naruko from the village for her own safety after her first encounter with the Rakubi cloak. Her temper? I asked, confused. But that's known to any village that has a Jinchūriki. They should have expected it. Except Naruko is the child of the previous Kyubi Jinchūriki, Yagura explained. No one could have predicted her circumstances. But those are just stories, I said doubtfully. They're real, Utakata confirmed. The tales you've heard about Kiri, the Kaguya, and the Yuki clans are history, not myths. Most villages avoid creating Jinchūriki children to prevent complications. Konoha is an exception. I frowned. But she seems perfectly normal. The Yondaime Hokage planned carefully, Yagura said. Half the Kyubi was sealed away safely, the other half within Naruko, which kept her calm. She was never truly in danger. And the reason you're all here? I asked, curious. Luck, Utakata said with a chuckle. Naruko's kind of magic brings people together. She meets others in her travels, and somehow, we all ended up together. The kid has amazing fortune. Just don't bet against her. I laughed, finally feeling a sense of relief and curiosity. Maybe it was worth sticking around this unique, ragtag group. I wondered what adventures awaited us next, and what mysteries in Kumo were unfolding while we traveled together. A gathering of storms and hope. Within the Raikage's quarters, the air felt heavy with concern rather than anger. The Yondaime Raikage, A, stood near the wide window, looking out over Kumagakure as reports were quietly delivered. Yugito had not returned from her assignment. It was unusual, especially for such a simple mission. She had been accompanied by Atsui, a skilled and dependable shinobi, and both had clear instructions to send updates along the way. The first message had arrived right on time, calm and professional. The second never came. Across the world, several villages had noticed a troubling pattern. Important guardians had gone missing without explanation. No signs of injury, no clear cause, only absence. As a precaution, villages had increased security and limited travel, focusing on protection and communication. The Raikage acted carefully. He sent a search team to the mission site, and they returned with unsettling news. The supply building was gone, replaced by a wide clearing filled with strange chakra traces. It felt unnatural, as if something powerful had passed through and quietly erased what once stood there. From his careful inspection, the Raikage reached two conclusions. First, Yugito had been taken somewhere unknown, not harmed, but removed from the board like a piece in a game no one fully understood. Second, the leaders of the villages needed to speak, together. A meeting of the five cage would be called, and it would be held in a neutral land where calm discussion could prevail. Until then, the Raikage placed trusted guards around his brother B, not out of fear, but out of care. Whatever was happening, it would be faced with unity. Shifting winds in Konoha. The message reached the Hokage swiftly. Tsunade read it once, then again, her expression serious but steady. She informed the village of her temporary absence and selected her escorts, Shizune, her ever-reliable assistant, and Jiraiya, whose presence surprised many. With Tsunade away, preparations were made to ensure the village continued to run smoothly. Every shinobi played their part, and although change always brought tension, Konoha remained strong. In one of the training fields, Sakura Haruno focused deeply as she practiced advanced illusion techniques. The forest around her shimmered subtly, shaped by careful chakra control. Though unseen, her classmates worked together to track her movements as part of a friendly training exercise. A false image faded away as Kiba and Akamaru paused, realizing they had been misled again. "She's getting better," Kiba admitted with a grin. Nearby, Hinata Hyuga stepped forward calmly, having already found Sakura's true position. With gentle precision, she tagged Sakura's shoulder, signaling the end of the exercise. "Well done," Sakura said, smiling as she caught her breath. "You've really grown into your role." Hinata nodded, helping her up. Over the past few years, Hinata had changed greatly. After a difficult emotional moment involving Naruko Uzumaki, she had taken time to reflect, grow, and build confidence. She trained with renewed purpose and recently earned a special Jonin rank, a sign of her dedication. Many of their classmates had grown as well, though friendships had shifted. Naruko's words from long ago still lingered in their minds. Some believed she had spoken without realizing the impact. Others felt hurt and unsure how to reconnect. Because of that, distance had formed, not out of anger, but uncertainty. If only Naruko could find peace, Sakura thought quietly, maybe we all could, too. A council in the shadows. Far away, in a quiet cavern filled with glowing symbols, a mysterious gathering began. Figures appeared one by one as shimmering projections, each standing calmly in place. Their leader spoke with a composed, steady voice. "Our original goal was to guide the world toward balance using great power," he said. "But we underestimated the strength of individual hearts." The group learned that the five cage would soon meet to discuss the recent disappearances. Rather than confront them directly, the leader proposed a new plan, one based on observation, information, and careful timing. Some members would travel to gather knowledge. Others would remain behind to prepare peaceful alternatives. One masked figure stepped forward, requesting a private exchange of information with Itachi. The message he delivered was troubling, but not final. It concerned changes, choices, and the consequences of ambition. Itachi listened silently, then turned away. He had his own path to walk, one guided not by anger, but by responsibility. As the projections faded, the cave grew quiet once more. The world stood at a crossroads, not of conflict, but of understanding. And somewhere beyond the forests and mountains, Naruko Uzumaki continued her journey, learning, growing, and unknowingly holding the key to bringing old friends back together. Naruko tiptoed through the wide hallways of the research facility, her bright orange headband gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Her curious eyes darted from one lab room to another, fascinated by the strange experiments she had never seen before. The air buzzed with energy, but unlike the other visitors who seemed nervous, Naruko's excitement made her bounce on the balls of her feet. At the end of the hallway, a tall man in a crisp lab coat waited, tapping a tablet in his hand. He was Satoshi Aoi, the head scientist of the facility, and he looked up as Naruko approached. "Good morning, Naruko," he said with a cautious smile. "I was expecting you." Naruko grinned widely. "I heard you've been working on some really cool experiments. Can you show me?" Satoshi chuckled. "Of course. As of this morning, we have over 200 subjects involved in our new energy enhancement project. Most of them are at level 2 of the training program. A small number are able to focus their energy more effectively than the others, which allows them to lead or guide the rest in exercises." "Wow." Naruko's eyes sparkled. "So they can help each other learn faster?" "Exactly," Satoshi nodded. "And there's one special participant, let's call her Patient Zero, who is very careful with her abilities. She's more interested in helping others than in showing off, so she's making progress more slowly in some areas, but she's learning responsibility and teamwork." Naruko's smile softened. I like that. Learning to care about others is more important than just being the strongest. Satoshi adjusted his glasses. When will the others be ready for the next stage? They're all prepared for challenges, and the new participants only need a few hours of practice before they can join in safely. Naruko twirled her headband with excitement. Then let's get started. I want to see everyone try their best and help each other grow. Satoshi nodded, looking relieved. Also, our sister facility in the south sent an update. They've been studying ways to guide energy more precisely, and their experiments show that careful guidance helps participants reach their full potential without any risks. They've been collecting a variety of samples and methods to make the exercises more effective, and everything is going smoothly. Naruko's eyes lit up even brighter. That's amazing. Science and teamwork together make such a great combination. Satoshi hesitated for a moment, then added, there's one more thing. The newest experiment has energy readings that are much stronger than anything we've seen. It's challenging to control, but it's incredibly promising. Naruko leaned forward, curious. Challenging, but promising. I like that. It's like a puzzle we get to solve together. Satoshi exhaled and smiled nervously. Yes, and I think with guidance, anyone can learn to manage it. Naruko bounced on her toes, determination shining on her face. Then let's do it. We'll figure it out together, step by step, and make sure everyone can shine. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and even the normally serious scientists couldn't help but smile. Naruko looked around the hallway once more, ready for the adventure ahead. With patience, teamwork, and curiosity, she knew they could accomplish anything, one bright step at a time. Has someone gone to make sure that Naruko and Fu aren't getting into trouble again? Utakata asked bluntly, and the question immediately drew curious glances from everyone around the campfire. Most of the group rolled their eyes at his phrasing, but Roshi had already stood up, clearly determined to make sure the two teens weren't causing any mischief. Yugito, sitting next to Utakata while they shared a simple rabbit stew dinner, couldn't help but smile quietly at the chaos. Ever since she'd woken up under their care a few days ago, she'd found the group's antics endlessly entertaining, even if she wouldn't admit it out loud. Apparently, Fu had a habit of clinging to Naruko whenever she got excited or nervous, insisting that they were some sort of team of destiny or something equally dramatic. At first, she had acted as if Jinchūriki like Naruko were entirely different from humans, a misunderstanding that had led to a few very awkward moments, until everyone stepped in to calm her down. Now, Fu had learned to trust her friends more and had even started thinking more carefully about her actions, which made her bursts of energy a little less chaotic. I wonder how long it'll take Roshi to notice their shenanigans, Gaara mused from the other side of the fire. A few quiet chuckles rippled through the group. Yugito had been told that Gaara had once been extremely serious and very lonely, even acting in ways that scared others. But now, sitting across from him, it was hard to imagine the same intensity in the cheerful, friendly teen who shared jokes and stories with everyone. Honestly, Han added, shaking her head with a grin, Naruko and Fu always seemed to find the funniest ways to test the rules. You'd think they'd have learned by now that Roshi always knows what they're up to. The group laughed quietly, the fire crackling as the night settled in. And somewhere near the edge of the camp, Naruko and Fu, completely oblivious to the attention, were busy planning their next harmless prank, both of them determined to make each other laugh until their stomachs hurt. Han was one of the more open members of the group, as Yugito discovered. Whenever someone needed to talk, the giant seemed to sense it instinctively, guiding them to the edge of the camp or the quiet of the forest, listening patiently, and offering gentle encouragement. Han also had an incredible sense of humor. Yugito had heard endless stories of the playful pranks he had played on his teammates, even before joining this unique group of Jinchūriki. The laughter they shared made the long days of travel feel lighter, even in the snow-covered forests of the Land of Iron. But Yugito's mind wandered to a dilemma she couldn't shake. She knew that as Jinchūriki, each of them was among the strongest shinobi in their respective hidden villages. Most had held at least the rank of Chunin, though Naruko, who had been just a Jinan when she left Konoha, was now part of this remarkable team. It didn't make sense at first. How could a young shinobi like her be trusted with such responsibility? Yugito shook her head and pushed the thought aside. What mattered was the mission at hand, and the group's shared bond as Jinchūriki who had all, in their own way, stepped away from their villages. Each Jinchūriki had left for their own reasons, but to Yugito, the idea of abandoning one's village was hard to understand. Being a Jinchūriki was an honor, a mark of strength and dedication. Yugito herself had learned to draw on the power of the Nibi just enough to take the form of the Bacon Echo, but overusing it was dangerous. Still, the fear wasn't what weighed on her. The puzzling part was Naruko. Naruko had left Konoha on her own terms, choosing adventure, friendship, and the pursuit of her own path. And yet, somehow, she inspired the others to follow, forming a group that now felt like a second family. That independent spark was something Yugito admired, even if it was confusing to her analytical mind. A sudden voice broke her thoughts. "You didn't have to go all dramatic on us, did you?" Naruko's smooth, confident tone carried from the shadows. Beside her, Fu giggled as she linked arms with Naruko, playfully nudging her. The older Jinchūriki Roshi looked flustered, clearly caught in the middle of their teasing antics. Naruko laughed lightly, brushing off Roshi's protests. "We just wanted to see if you'd keep up," she teased, her eyes sparkling with mischievous energy. Yugito watched, fascinated by how naturally the young girl drew everyone's attention, not through intimidation, but through pure confidence, warmth, and good humor. Shivering slightly in the cold, Yugito huddled closer to the fire, thankful for the thick winter clothing the group had provided. She glanced at Utakata, quietly observing him as he packed up his tent. There was a gentleness in how he carried himself, shaped by years of careful training, but his eyes lingered on Naruko more than he would admit. "Hey," Utakata began, lowering his voice as he fell a few steps behind Han. "Do you have a moment?" Han cut straight to the point. "You like her," he said bluntly. Utakata froze, caught off guard by the giant's directness. What? "You're infatuated," Han clarified, walking beside him as they moved along the snowy path. Utakata's face turned red as he glanced ahead at Naruko, laughing and helping Fu tie a rope for their supplies.
I don't know how to even bring it up," he muttered, almost whispering.
Han nodded knowingly. "Then ask. Simple as that. She's not a puzzle, she's Naruko. You'll never know unless you try." Utakata hesitated, glancing at the girl who had unknowingly captured the hearts of everyone around her. There was something fearless about her, something warm that drew people in, but also something respectful of each person's space. She didn't demand attention, she inspired it. The thought made Utakata smile despite his nervousness. Maybe I will," he said softly. Han just grinned, pleased to see the younger shinobi finally embracing honesty. Up ahead, Naruko had already turned her head, catching a glimpse of the two behind her. She winked and waved, her energy as bright as the fire flickering in the night. And for the first time in a while, Yugito realized that perhaps leaving one's village wasn't about abandonment, it was about finding a place where your strength could shine, and a family that truly understood you. Glowing star emoji, a gentle journey with Naruko, glowing star emoji. The winter path shimmered softly under the morning light as Naruko walked at the front of the group, her bright scarf fluttering cheerfully in the breeze. She hummed a tune she had made up herself, stepping carefully so she would not disturb the snow too much. Naruko loved moments like these, quiet, thoughtful walks where she could enjoy the world and the friends around her. Behind her, several travelers chatted happily, sharing stories and laughter. One of them, a tall man with calm eyes, offered thoughtful advice to another who seemed a little nervous. "Sometimes," he said kindly, "the best way to understand your feelings is simply to talk. Learning about someone helps both people grow." The nervous traveler nodded, clearly thinking hard about the words. Nearby, a woman with warm energy smiled and joined the conversation, adding a funny story about her village. Soon, everyone was laughing together, the earlier tension fading like footprints in fresh snow. Naruko glanced back and grinned. Seeing people connect made her heart feel light. She believed that friendships, and maybe even deeper bonds, grew best when people listened, respected each other, and shared honestly. Up ahead, a small watchtower appeared on the horizon. Instead of danger, it represented a place of learning and discovery. The group slowed down, curious and excited rather than worried. Naruko clapped her hands once, eyes shining. "Hey, everyone!" she called cheerfully. "Let's take this slow and enjoy it. New places mean new lessons." Her optimism was contagious. Even the quietest members of the group stood a little taller, smiling as they followed her lead. Naruko didn't want to be admired for strength alone. She wanted to be known for kindness, determination, and her belief that people could always improve. Every step she took was part of her growth, not just as a skilled traveler, but as a caring person who brought others together. As the group continued onward, the path ahead felt bright and full of promise. And Naruko, as always, moved forward with hope. Naruko crouched on the edge of the sparkling valley, her bright orange scarf fluttering in the gentle wind. She was waiting patiently, her ears perked up as she tried to sense the movements of the mysterious creature that lived in the deep, twisting tunnels beneath the hills. She had heard stories of the great, purple-scaled serpent that lived underground, a creature said to be as clever as it was gentle. Naruko closed her eyes and reached out with her senses, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath her, the tiny vibrations of roots, rocks, and streams. I wonder what you're up to today, she whispered to herself, smiling. Suddenly, a ripple of movement passed through the ground, and the serpent's head emerged, glimmering in the sunlight. But instead of fear, Naruko giggled. She had spent weeks learning how to communicate with this creature, and today, she wanted to try something new. "Hello, friend," she called softly. The serpent's eyes sparkled in recognition. It twisted and danced in the air, sending small clouds of sparkling dust swirling around it. Naruko's hands glowed faintly as she created a trail of floating, glowing shapes, like stars and tiny dragons, floating around them. The serpent swirled around the shapes, tracing them with delight, as if playing a game of tag. From behind the hills, another figure appeared, a clever trickster who liked to test her problem-solving skills. Naruko narrowed her eyes, not with anger, but with playful determination. "All right, let's see if I can solve your puzzle today," she said, twirling in a circle to dodge a harmless wind blast sent her way. Using her quick thinking and nimble movements, she guided the glowing shapes to form a bridge over a small stream. The trickster clapped in amusement, impressed by her cleverness. As the sun began to dip behind the mountains, Naruko and the serpent practiced teamwork, weaving through the sparkling lights and playing games of chase and hide and seek. Every misstep was a lesson, every twist a chance to grow. Naruko's laughter echoed through the valley, mixing with the soft whoosh of the serpent's movements. Finally, as evening approached, the serpent dipped back into its tunnel with a friendly swirl, leaving Naruko standing on the hilltop, proud and beaming. "See you tomorrow," she said, waving. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity. Every day was a new adventure, and she knew that with patience, creativity, and kindness, she could face any challenge the world had in store for her. And as the stars began to twinkle overhead, Naruko sat down, thinking of the games she'd play, the puzzles she'd solve, and the friends, both human and magical, she would meet along the way. The valley was full of surprises, and she was ready for every single one of them. Naruko stood on the edge of the canyon, her bright orange scarf fluttering in the wind. The land below had changed dramatically after the massive storm that had swept through the mesas. Where there had once been flat plains and tall rock formations, there were now jagged cliffs and swirling dust clouds. The transformation made the whole area look like a strange, magical playground. Across from her, a mysterious figure appeared amidst the shifting shadows, her long coat billowing dramatically. It was Orochi-sama, a cunning ninja known for her clever tricks and illusions. Naruko tightened her grip on her kunai, her blue eyes sparkling with determination. "You've grown stronger, Naruko," Orochi-sama said, her voice calm but full of challenge. "But can you really match me today?" Naruko's grin widened. "I'm not here to match you, I'm here to show you that clever thinking beats trickery any day." With a swift motion, Orochi-sama sent a shimmering, ribbon-like illusion sweeping toward Naruko. But Naruko was faster, leaping high into the air and spinning gracefully, letting the ribbons pass beneath her. She landed lightly, her fingers tracing a series of quick hand signs. From the ground erupted a circle of glowing shadow clones, not real ones, but playful copies that mimicked her movements perfectly. Orochi-sama blinked, surprised. "Clever," she admitted, as the clones began bouncing around, creating a dazzling maze of motion. Naruko dashed through it, her energy bright and lively. "You're not the only one who can play tricks," Naruko said, summoning a playful burst of wind that sent Orochi-sama spinning slightly. But instead of hurting her, the wind scattered the illusion ribbons harmlessly into the air. The two ninjas laughed, the sound echoing across the canyon like a friendly challenge rather than a battle. "Your creativity. It's impressive," Orochi-sama said, raising her arms to form another complex jutsu. Glimmering shapes began floating toward Naruko, like colorful puzzle pieces. Naruko's eyes sparkled as she leapt into action, using a combination of her clones and acrobatics to guide the shapes into perfect alignment. With a final twist, the shapes formed a glowing bridge across the canyon, connecting both sides. Orochi-sama stared, genuinely impressed. "I didn't expect that. You didn't just dodge my illusions, you turned them into something wonderful." Naruko landed gracefully, her hands on her hips. "That's what teamwork and imagination can do. You can be strong with tricks, but you can be stronger when you think creatively, and help others along the way." The wind settled, the canyon returning to its sparkling, magical calm. Orochi-sama laughed, a rare, genuine smile crossing her face. "I admit it, Naruko. Today, you've outshined me." Naruko waved, her heart full of excitement. "Thanks. But don't worry, I know you'll come up with even better tricks next time. And I'll be ready." The two ninjas stood on opposite cliffs, the sun setting behind them, painting the sky in brilliant orange and pink streaks. It wasn't about winning or losing, it was about learning, growing, and having fun with every challenge that came their way. Dear YouTube family, this is all for now. If you enjoyed the content, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support keeps this journey going. Thank you for watching and being part of this community. Warm regards. Six Path Weeb.